Colma,
Okay.
Daly City, East Palo. I know he's here. I'll circle back. Foster City, Half Moon Bay, Hillsborough,
Leslie Ragsdale here.
Stanos, Menlo Park, Gray, Pacifica, Portola Valley, Redwood City, San Bruno, San Carlos, San Mateo, South San Francisco, Woodside. And I'm gonna circle back to Los Banos.
I'm here, Paul Jonas.
Thank you. Okay. And I know Carlos Romero is present. He must just have stepped out of the room for a moment. Okay, we have a quorum.
Okay, great. Okay. Peninsula Clean Energy Board of Directors meetings are a limited public forum, and all public comment must relate to something that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. If comments do not relate to the subject matter jurisdiction of the board, we will stop the comment and we will move on to the next speaker. General counsel will assist in identifying comments that are not related to the subject matter of the board. First item on the agenda is public comment. Is there any public comment? I don't see any public comment here. No public comment online.
Give a reminder to board members, though, when you are speaking, please make sure that you state your name before you give a comment so that the public knows who is speaking. Please and thanks.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to pull any item off the consent agenda? Or does anyone have a comment on one of the items? Okay, seeing no such request, can I get an action to set the agenda and approve the consent item?
So move. Second.
Okay,
Who said that?
that was made by Anders, and I think seconded, was it Harvey?
Romero.
Oh,
Okay,
okay, so we'll go through a roll call.
yep,
San Mateo County, Atherton,
yes.
Belmont,
Yeah.
you, Brisbane,
Yes.
Burlingame,
Yes.
Colma,
Good.
Daly City, East Palo Alto,
Here, Carlos Romero.
and voting for consent.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm a little bomb.
City, Half Moon Bay,
Yes.
Hillsborough,
Yes.
Los Banos. Los Banos, sorry, I saw you on mute, but we didn't hear anything.
Oh, I said yes.
Thank you. Menlo Park, Middle Break,
Aye.
Pacifica,
Yes.
Portola Valley,
Aye.
Redwood City, San Bruno,
Yes.
San Carlos, San Mateo,
Yes.
South San Francisco, and Woodside. Thank you. Motion passes.
Great. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the chair report. I don't have a report, so we will move to the CEO report.
Good evening, everybody. It's nice to see you all here again. Let's see, I will advance the slides. Okay, I'm gonna move through these quickly because we have a pretty hefty agenda tonight. And hopefully you all were able to read the report that was in the packet. So I'm gonna skim, and if you have any questions, feel free to stop me and we'll get them answered. So in the programs area, just two quick things to let you all know about. I included the letter that was sent to the Department of Housing and Community Development through CalCCA and a number of other sister organizations to request that HCD not amend the building code in 2026 that would essentially have stymied the development of, or the placement of EV level 1 chargers in apartment buildings that are being retrofitted. So in essence, they were looking to kind of cut that piece out and require level 2. We pushed back on that, saying that, we've invested a lot in the right-sized approach to EV charging, especially in our apartment buildings where you can charge overnight and receive similar charge. So that is in play. It's looking good at this point. Then last week, the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Board adopted a contract similar to the one that your board adopted last month for Franklin Energy. Theirs is in the amount of $14 million for turnkey electrification service. So that's great news because we're going to partner on that. So there's a total investment in our 2 counties of 40 million. The contractors like it because we're going to bring some standardization to the marketplace in terms of approach and things. So we feel like that was a big win. On the regulatory side, our disadvantaged community green tariff program, DAC GT, has expanded to now include 2,200 customers. That's a 65% expansion. And folks who participate in that program receive 100% solar energy and a 20% overall discount on all aspects of their electricity bill. So it's a significant discount for folks, and those folks have to live in a disadvantaged community. They have to be part of the AMP program, which was the program that deferred customer bills during COVID, and also CareFera. So there are a couple of qualifications, and after that, it's really a lottery if we get more interest. So that expansion is a good thing for our customers. You may have also read that the CPUC in the provider of last resort decision, the Polar decision, a piece of that increased financial security requirements for all CCAs. That has been going on for several years, and where they landed was essentially a $4.20 charge per customer. And that money, in our case, it will be just over $1.3 million. We have 310,000 accounts. That money is held in an escrow account, and it's to be used if for any reason we had to return customers to PG&E service. So it's unlikely ever to be used, but it sits there almost as a guarantee. At some point, it may shift to a letter of credit, but we'll see what happens with that. So overall,
And does that stay on our financial statement?
Yep, it's cash.
It's cash.
But it's gotta be a designated account.
Yeah,
Well, and the letter of credit is not free either.
right,
Let's look at.
yeah, we're
The
gonna
value
do some
of-
cost comparison.
Yeah.
Right now, we're earning 1% on the cash in there and could be earning 5%. So that's a net 4% cost. Letter of credit's probably less than that, so it probably makes sense. Or surety bond, we'll look at that too.
yeah. I feel like we're in good shape to be able to meet that objective. My thoughts go out to the smaller CCAs who are really suffering vagaries of regulatory cost right now. So overall, we can do it. Some others, it's gonna be hard. Okay, next up is, and Shayna's here to answer any questions you guys might have, but in brief, the US EPA Green Power Program has some new, more stringent requirements to meet their threshold to be a EPA Green Power community. As you guys might remember, that is a voluntary program. What cities get from it is a sign that probably a lot of you have in your communities, and you get access to some level of information resources from EPA. It does not confer any monetary support or anything more than really honestly some pretty good PR. As I said, the requirements have gotten more stringent so that communities have to be Eco 100 or have a certain percentage of their commercial customers achieving that Eco 100 or participating in that product. So right now, Portola Valley, Foster City, and I believe it was San Mateo, Menlo Park, excuse me, would qualify under the new rules. The rest of our communities do not because our Eco Plus product does not achieve that objective. And the other thing that it has to requires is participation in Green E certification, and the cost of that certification has gone through the roof. So we looked at it and have determined that unfortunately, we're gonna have to discontinue that. If cities want to continue to participate, you're welcome to do so on their own, but it does require a bump up to Eco 100. We're thinking about a program that would replace it. And we will be in touch with city staff next week about this. So just wanted to let you know, give you a heads up about that reality. Okay, I think you all are aware that a new piece of what we're doing is sort of in the bucket of our federal strategy. And the reason that we are pursuing a federal strategy at all is to boost awareness and credibility, frankly, for PCE and CCA at the federal level, to participate or influence in matters of federal energy policy. So for example, transmission issues, the Inflation Reduction Act, we're trying to make sure that CCAs are included as an authorized beneficiary of said funds because we represent local government. We are also looking to diversify our own revenues through which to scale up our program. So you might have seen that we included with my report a proposal for $2 million earmark for our low-income home electrification program. If we get it, that will electrify an additional 200 homes in our service territory. Mark and I traveled to Washington last week with several other CCAs. We had on the order of 10 meetings, 10 or 12 over a couple days, including with the Department of Energy, which was great and important. A couple of subcommittees and all of our legislators, we met with their staff in their DC office. So overall, step in the right direction, and we hope that we will get at least part of our request, and we'll keep you posted. Couple of invitations. You all by now are aware that the annual conference is in San Jose this year, next month, April 16 to 18. You all are welcome to attend. There's also the Sustainable San Mateo County event coming up on April 10th. We have a table and there are 3 comp tickets left. If anyone would like to go, please let Nellie know. And if not, then what we'll do is we'll loop out and invite our community partners to fill those seats. So that's April 10th.
And what is that again?
Did you say?
San Mateo County
Oh, I see.
Sustainability Awards.
Oh, yeah,
PCE is getting one this year, which is great.
yeah, okay, so,
April 10th.
okay.
Yeah, I know you went last year.
I
You went
think I
last
have tickets, I'm a sponsor again this year.
So if any others want to go, we've got 3.
I'm trying to get our city to buy a 10-person table. But I haven't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I have you guys help me advance the slides? It's not working. There we go. Nope. It's messing with me now. On the left are just upcoming topics. We have a very busy coming couple of months, so just giving you a heads up of what's coming down the pike in the next 3 or so board meetings. And then we're filling out the calendar for our member agency briefings that have been going very well. Monday night, I'll be at Burlingame and then to Pacifica on the 8th and San Bruno on the 23rd, and then the rest throughout the rest of the year. And then last but not least, a great new crop of staff joining us. I will say, just pointing out the last one, Kelly Quintal will be joining us as our first ever risk manager, which is a position that took a while to recruit. So I want to say thanks to Nick for staying on that
Thank you.
and finding a super qualified person to join our team. That's great. All right, here are the current positions. We've got a couple of internships open and upcoming meetings. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Is there any public comment on the CEO report? Any public comment? The next item on the agenda is the Community Advisory Committee report. And that would bring up Cheryl.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Chair DeGolia and members of the board. The CAC met March 14th and heard CFO Nick Bijou explain options for setting customer rates, the cost of service method used now, and a hybrid approach recommended by staff. He reviewed the benefits and challenges of each method. Then committee members asked about the frequency of rate changes and how they may affect the budget for energy programs. Members shared that PCE's lower rates build support for electrification by local elected officials, and that they hope the recommended hybrid approach will not hinder development of new programs. Next, Leslie Brown, Director of Account Services, explained proposed changes for net energy metering customers whose solar systems produce more value in excess energy than they've consumed. Members discussed encouraging excessive solar generating customers to install batteries, but Leslie explained that retrofitting a solar system with batteries is expensive and requires infrastructure upgrades. When asked if it's possible to align PCE's and PG&E's true-up, Connor Prince, Senior Analyst Account Services, said that would require overhauling of the billing system and more coordination with PG&E. The CAC made this recommendation to you. The Community Advisory Committee supports the staff recommendation regarding changes to the NEM annual cash-out policy and asks PCE to encourage the excessive solar generators to fully electrify their facilities, add battery storage, and/or explore the potential for microgrids. Kirsten Andrew Schwinn, Associate Director of Community Relations and Climate Equity, prepared our group to represent PCE at upcoming spring outreach events. She reviewed current talking points and answers to key questions that residents may ask us. Kirsten then recruited more members to work these events. Jason Mendelson, committee member, reviewed research done by the Solar and Storage Programs Working Group and asked members to share examples of other solar and storage programs. Member Robert Whitehair announced the upcoming electrification workshop in detail. This completes my report. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions? I don't see any, Cheryl.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let me just see if there's any public comment on your report. Does anyone have a public comment? I don't see any public comment. Thank you, Cheryl.
Of course.
The next item on the agenda is the selection of the Board of Directors Chair and Vice Chair for the next year. And just to remind everyone how this works, the chair appoints a nominating committee of 3 to 5 people. They solicit anyone from the board that's interested in applying for the chair and vice chair position. Our nominating committee this year was and is Jeff Phelps, Colleen Mackin, and Anders Fung. And they got a number of responses from people that applied for those positions, and then they make a recommendation. The board votes on that recommendation up or down. And assuming that we come out of this meeting with a new chair and vice chair, then at our next meeting, that chair and vice chair make a recommendation to the board for who will be the executive committee for the next year, which is a maximum of 9 members, and who will be the audit and finance committee, which is a maximum of 5 members, I believe. This is time for a report from the nominating committee.
Thank you. Fortunately, Jeff could not be here tonight, so I will fill in, and Colleen and I. And the committee has met with several interested parties. We're very obviously excited that Director Colson is willing to serve, and we're looking forward to already been serving many years on audits and finance committee as well as the executive committee, and so certainly her involvement and experience in PCE throughout she's been here has been excellent. So we're very excited to have an opportunity to nominate Donna to be our next chair. And we also interviewed several interested parties for vice chair position, and obviously we have spoken to Patty, who have expressed interest. in this position as well, and we obviously have served on the executive committee as well as on the audits and finance, so we're very pleased that we demonstrated the most interest and most qualified for this position. So to that end, Colleen, do you have anything else?
I have nothing to add, and I think it's a good testament to the board that we have, that there were other candidates and that there's obviously really good succession going forward, and appreciate everyone's involvement.
So, so it is the nominating committee's recommendation for Director Colson to be the chair for the next year, and also Director Medina as the vice chair for the upcoming year.
Great. Would you, either of you like to say anything?
Yes, Marty Medina. So I'm very honored to be considered. I can tell you a short story. When I was first put on Peninsula Clean Energy's board, was at the very beginning. And it was because nobody else wanted to do it. At the very beginning, we that are still here, at the beginning, we met way more than what we're doing now. This is nice and easy. We have very capable staff, and we've grown. And I can tell you that one of the greatest accomplishments of being on as a San Bernardino City Councilman has been serving on DC and what we're doing. It's really amazing. We're showing what can be done and how well this organization works. With Donna's encouragement, I started getting into the executive committee and audit and finance, and the more you figure it out, it's a great testament of all the great work we're doing and how much more that we need to do. So I feel with Donna as the chair and being able to step in there, and I wanted to say thank you to Chair DeGolia for all your years of service and leadership, and I think I really appreciate this opportunity to continue moving forward. So thank you. Right.
I have a few things to say afterwards, after the vote, but I'm Donna Colson and City of Burlingame. I really want to thank the nominating committee. I know that you had many iterations of meetings, and there was a lot of excellent people from which to choose. I'm honored to have been nominated. I too began this journey when I first got on the council, so it's been almost 9 years, and it's been a real pleasure to work with the previous chairs, Chair DeGolia, Chair Pine, Chair Alves. But I'm also really proud to be the first woman to be nominated for this role, because you know, there are a lot of women on our boards. We represent a lot of women, and I just am, you know, really grateful that you were able to, you know, that you supported my candidacy. So thank you very much. It's been wonderful working with Sean, you know, being involved in the hiring of Sean, the strategic planning, chairing the DEAI work. And I think those initiatives are critical to the success of this organization, and they sort of build the second level of foundation of the work we do. So I look forward to continuing that work. And I really want to also thank Rick. You, Jeff, Dave have been incredible mentors. I didn't know, still kind of don't know the difference between a megawatt and a gigawatt and a kilowatt, but I know a lot about running a company, so I'm okay with that. I have a little cheat sheet. But you all really understood the energy industry, and I have learned an enormous amount from all of you. And like I say, I'm just grateful to have had, you know, the leadership, your leadership, and been able to work under that. And for you to have taken the enormous amount of time. And now I know Sean and Shalini, and we have Nick, everybody. Yeah, we have, Shalini. We have everybody in place with a wonderful C-suite. So I think this job is going to be a little different than it was in the past. As you say, Marty, there's more staff fills out, but I'm excited and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Great. Anybody on the board have any questions or any other comments?
The nomination committee did say that we will be willing to take a floor nomination should there be one.
Okay.
So it's basically nomination is not definitive. We're waiting for the entire board to act.
Okay, so I will treat the report from the nominating committee as a motion to approve Donna as chair and Marty as vice chair. And we can do a roll call.
You're treating the memo as both a motion and a second because there's multiple members.
Oh.
Which is fine.
We need, yeah,
I mean, you can treat it as a motion and a second. if
I'll
you
treat it
like.
as a motion in a second. Thank you.
I'll make
You're
the
right.
motion.
I'll second.
There we have it.
There you go. Even better.
Chair, I mean, for the comments, should you call for nominations from the floor?
Yes,
Yes,
Sure.
we
you
should.
should.
Is there any nominations from the floor? Okay, I don't see any. Great.
Motion to support the staff report. As indicated.
So you got a motion and a second. You want to offer public comment real quick and then you can take a vote?
Okay, is there any public comment? I don't see any public comment. Let's do a roll call.
Tim Tukin. Sam Tukin. Atherton.
Yes.
Belmont.
Yes.
Brisbane.
Yes.
Burlingame.
Yes.
Homeland.
Yes.
Daly City. East Palo Alto.
Yeah.
Foster City. Half Moon Bay.
Yes.
Hillsborough.
Yes.
Los Banos.
Yes.
Menlo Park. Millbrae.
Yeah.
Pacifica. Portola Valley. Redwood City. San Bruno.
Yep.
San Carlos. San Mateo.
Yes.
South San Francisco. Woodside. Thank you. Motion passes.
Great, thank you. And congratulations. I just want to say. I've worked closely with both Donna and Marty over these last 3 years, and really since the beginning of PCE. And I'm thrilled that we have a woman running the board, running the company, and that this has always been an organization with very strong women in it. So I think it's really important. I really believe that. That's not just words. The collaboration that we've had, both individually and collectively through our executive committee, has truly been remarkable. I mean, this last year has been a very challenging year for this organization, and we've essentially rebuilt it first at the staff level and now at the strategic level, as we've been addressing those strategic issues as a board. So I feel extremely positive about it and positive about the leadership that we have going forward.
Thank you, Chair DeGolia. I think that probably deserves a little round of applause. Also, this sort of a token of all of our appreciation, and I'll show you in a minute. But I would like to open the floor up for any comments that anyone would like to share with Chair DeGolia, or anything in particular anyone wants to say. Holly?
Chair DeGolia, you run a really good meeting. Thank you very much for that, and we don't take that for granted, haven't taken it for granted, and it will always rest fondly in our memories, how well you ran the meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Mackin. Yes, Director Robert.
I also want to express my sincere appreciation. Not only just you run a good meeting, you know a lot, you've taught me a lot, and I'm glad to be part of what your board has been. So thank you very much.
Yes, Director Bigstick.
Sometimes I think I could be here 10 years and still feel like a new guy on the board. I really want to thank you for the time you took when I was first on the board and onboarding me and finding out about me and explaining to me what was going on. Always being present in such a fashion that I felt like I could reach out to you at any time for any reason and you would absolutely be there. And the way you listen.
Yes, please.
It's
Director
gonna be
Laird.
hard to top that. I'll just briefly thank you, Director DeGolia, Chair DeGolia, and you know, those who have just been brought into the chair and vice chair roles. Really, anyone who's been on this board for as long as some of the original members have been. It's a testament to the commitment, and just as a new person and alternate coming into the board, as much as I already liked PCE, what I really appreciated was getting a feel from the top down on the board, how seriously those who come to these meetings take their work. This is just one of the myriad things council members need to deal with. And yet to give it the sort of rigor and to dig into the material, and bring all that you can to this organization to further it as much as possible, is evident through the meetings, and I very much appreciate it and am inspired by it. Thank you.
Okay, yes, I was gonna ask. I'm pretty sure CEO Marshall would like to say
Would
something.
love to,
Sean?
but I'll wait if there's
Is there
others.
anyone? Please, please.
Thank you for leading us, this organization, more successful and this came in through the pandemic. And one of the most difficult time in history of human being. for the most part, right? And a very young organization. We founded in 2016, only been 7 years and change. It's no, and we're as successful as we are today. There's the leadership. You know, obviously in the last year or two, it's been a lot of challenges. We also have a lot of staff changes as well, and you manage it really, really well. And then keep the organization focused, and be as successful as we are, and be able to give back to the community that we serve. So that is no small feat. Congratulations. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. All right. Sean, please.
Yes.
I just want to say I'm so grateful you're not leaving. You're not going to be very far. I also want to just say thank you for everything. I remember you from day one and coming to your council, and you've always been a champion for this organization. You've always done your homework, studied up. I mean, you're now a bona fide expert. And it's been a pleasure to work alongside you and also work for you in this last couple of years. And I really have appreciated your guidance and patience and the way you managed the transition. Leadership transition was masterful, and it, you know, can be difficult. And I have to say that I really do thank you for all you did to make that a graceful exit for Jan, a good exit for Jan, and a graceful entrance for me. So I'm gonna miss you in this role, but you aren't very far. And so I look forward to seeing you and having you still, I think, on executive committee and
Oh, yeah.
other key committees, so.
Immediate past president is a very important role in this
Right.
board.
So thank you.
Thank you.
And then I'll just wrap it up. What I would encourage in order so we can progress the meeting is if any of the staff members have anything they want to say, rather than sort of manage through it right now, because I think it could take a while, please do email Chair DeGolia and let him know your sentiments, or catch him before or after. I know that he has had one of the most important pillars of his framework of leadership has been acknowledging and supporting our staff at all levels, and making sure that, you know, everyone feels included and welcome and supported in this organization. And we went sort of from being a startup to being, you know, a full-fledged $350, $400 million a year operating business. And that's a really difficult transition. And as the organization has grown and people have come on, you've done a wonderful job of creating a diverse and varied and highly talented staff. And I think you deserve a lot of credit. Transition had to do in management. So I thank you for supporting staff. So please, any of the staff people, feel free to catch Rick at a different time. Again, I want to echo Sean's words. I think as a person who's learning this business, you've been a wonderful mentor. You have supported every single person on this board in every capacity, I'll say it's rare to find a leader that is so optimistic and has such a positive outlook as you. And I always am so refreshed when I'm around you because you're inspiring and you're motivating and you have a lot of integrity and you genuinely care about everyone on this board and the mission that we have here. So, you know, on behalf of everyone in this organization, it is my great pleasure to share with you this beautiful gift. I'll give it to you here. It looks like a light bulb. I think that's quite clever for everyone to see. And it's Peninsula Clean Energy, Rick DeGolia, with appreciation for your service as board chair from 2021 to 2024. I'll hand it over. I think it's absolutely beautiful. And I hope when you, you know, finally retire from this political world and this business that you'll look back and think about all of us over the years and how grateful we are for your service.
Thank you, Rick.
This is what in my business we call a cube.
Yeah.
And it's always the ultimate of taking a company public, because that's where you get cubes. And it's nice. Thank you very much.
You're very, very welcome.
I just want to say, you know, this is a really tough business. And this is a business that is totally mystified. And it's intentionally mystified by the IOUs and the CPUC. And it keeps a limited number of people knowledgeable when it's mystified, and it doesn't have to be. So I have pushed really hard to uncover those mysteries, you know, like how is it that we manage our power and can provide 100% clean power when we know the only available power at the nighttime and too much of the winter is system power, which is all natural gas generated. And to make that clear to all of you, so you can share that with your communities, I think is extremely important. And I think you've all felt that, and it's true, I'm 100% available to help move this organization forward and work with each one of you, because I think this business is absolutely critical. This is the most important regional body in the county, in my opinion. And we touch climate issues, right? I mean, that's the heart of what we do, and try to balance those issues in the context of what our customers' focus and needs are. And I think that's a challenging balance, partly because the way the whole electricity business is managed and how expensive that electricity is when it doesn't need to be. And we're moving into that issue. And because of that, I think this is just incredibly important. And the thing that's the most thrilling to me about it is the quality of the staff that we have. We really have remarkable staff in this organization. And I've been in a lot of public and private companies where some of those private companies had truly remarkable staff. But for this kind of a technical business, I don't think that I've ever touched an organization with the level of quality of staff from the top to the bottom that PCE has. And part of it is because our mission has been articulated so clearly that people who want to work with this organization can embrace that mission. And I think that's the board that did that. So I am optimistic, and it's really, I mean, it's hard work. I'm glad to step away from a little bit of that work, but I must say, it's not easy because, you know, when you get completely entrenched in something and you feel the roots, it's sort of hard to pull those up. But I think this organization is remarkable, and I'm really thrilled to continue to work with the board.
Thank you, Rick.
And to see this transition. I really am thrilled.
Well, thank you. I think we've taken public comment, and so we can conclude this item and we'll move on to our regular board business. Our first item, number 10, is approval of revisions to the net energy metering NEM and annual cash out policy. And we have Director of Account Services, Leslie Brown, with us, and I believe also Senior Analyst of Account Services, Connor Crooks, worked on this too.
Yeah, Connor's joining us remotely.
Okay.
He's not feeling well, so he didn't travel up to the meeting. And he sends his regrets. He really didn't want to be here. We had to make a call yesterday. I told him to stay home. Let's see. Oh, wait.
Sorry. Got that? Or that's quicker?
Okay. So just to start off, want to set the stage for where we're at with our current net energy metering program is for customers who generate excess energy, and some of the challenges or considerations that we are bringing forth and informed our recommendation going forward, and then touch on the recommendations that we have for the board. We did bring this to the executive committee earlier this month, as well as the CAC, so we have gotten some feedback along the way and made some adjustments from our original proposal based on that feedback that we got from those different bodies. But just to start off, so our net energy metering customers, that's NEM 1 and 2 customers. So the legacy customers that installed their systems from early 2000s up until this last year in April. Those folks are under a program where they earn a retail credit for excess generation of energy throughout the year. So if they have a month during the year where they're generating more energy than they consume, they earn a retail credit plus a bonus 1 cent per kilowatt hour for those excess kilowatt hours, and that credit is carried forward on their account to either be used in a later month when they might not generate as much energy, or if we get around to our cash out month, which is April, if they have more than $100 in credit on their account, they're issued a check. We just cut a check for whatever the value is in that account. If it's over $100, if it's less than $100, we keep that balance on the account and just rolls forward to the next month to be used against Peninsula Clean Energy charges, or they can end up earning more credits, and then as they eventually hit over that $100 threshold, then we'd issue a check the following year. And our current cap for the cash out is $20,000. It's a very generous cap. We put it in place a few years ago. But that's the program right now. So that's the most we will pay out for excess generation. Total is $20,000. Yes.
I think that where there is a customer credit, it doesn't just go against PCE, it goes against their bill, right? So it could be PG&E and.
Right now, it is just on the PCE side of the bill. Yeah, so right now, the way that the program, the way the credits work is they're kept on PCE side of the bill until the cash out period, and then we cut a check. So it doesn't cross over. What we're talking about, or proposal we have going forward, would be so that credits would then therefore cross over and pay PG&E charges. But right now, the credits are separate. They're carried in an escrow balance by our data management provider for a customer, just on the PCE side of the bill. Let's see. Okay, thank you. What's going on here? Okay, so just a little bit of a graphical representation of our cash outs historically. The going back to 2018, 2019, 2020, 21, the blue bar on there represents the cash out for our commercial customers, and the green bar represents the cash out amounts for our residential customers. The time frame, the snapshot this is from the April cash out period. So this is April 2018, April 2019, April 2020, when we're actually issuing those checks to customers for excess generation. You can see a little bit of, an increase in that 2021 cash out, so April 2021 in particular on commercial customers. What happened in that previous 12 months prior to that? A lot of commercial shutdowns, right, for COVID. Spaces were closed, buildings were not operating, people were working from home entirely. So a lot of commercial facilities that had solar systems were generating a lot of excess energy that, sort of self-corrected a bit in 2022 from the commercial space. The other factor that comes into play here for the cash out dollar amount is not just the kilowatt hours that are generated, but the credit that our cost of energy that we're charging customers and then therefore crediting back to customers. So when we're charging customers, for example, 6 or 7 cents a kilowatt hour, because that's our rate, because we're factoring in the PG&E generation minus PCA minus these other things, that customer is going to earn a credit at that retail rate. When there's fluctuations in the PCA, like we saw in the last couple of years, where it's dropped down to almost zero in most cases, our cost that we're charging customers has gone up and what we're crediting has gone up. So that's one of the reasons why you saw a large increase in the actual outflow of payments in the last couple of years, is because our rates have gone up. So our what we're crediting people and paying people for that same kilowatt hour generation has gone up. There's also been new systems that have come online. So it's many factors that are going on there.
Did you give a rough idea on that last one, like how much of it is increased customer base versus increased price?
So we don't get we're not necessarily tracking specifically how many new net energy metering customers are coming online. I can go back and look at some of the historical numbers. I do know, just sort of generically off the top of my head, when I started here, Peninsula Clean Energy had around 17,000 net metering accounts, and right now we're over 20,000, so we're in like 23,000 customer neighborhood. We've got on deck still sort of in the queue waiting to be installed under the old NEM 2 program, another couple thousand customers. So we have PG&E has been sharing those updated information, so we definitely have another 2,000 to 3,000 customers waiting to come online that have submitted initial applications with PG&E. They haven't completed their installation and gotten PTO yet, but know that we have that number of customers sort of on deck still to be installed over the next year or so. So some of the things that we're taking into consideration, we're evaluating this proposal and changes that we'd like to make to the cash out program. One of the big issues that we're trying to address is the fact that a certain percentage of our checks are not cash. So right now we're sending customers checks at that after the April cash out period, and roughly 2-3% of those checks are not being cashed on a regular basis. What happens in that scenario, we'll often we'll automatically send one more check when it expires, and then we hold and wait for the customer to reach out to us if that second check goes stale. Wait for them to reach out and say, hey, I think I was supposed to get a check, or I found this check and I didn't ever cash it, now it's stale, can you please issue me a new one? A lot of challenges there. There's a cost to canceling that check, reissuing it. Confusion on the customer's part. Sometimes they accidentally cash a stale check that causes them to have a stale check return fee. It's just not a great experience for folks all the time. And we currently have about $50,000-ish of outstanding checks that have never been cashed, that are sort of sitting out there, for customers because they've never cashed their checks, even though we've tried to send it to them and ask them to cash it. So that's one of the things we're trying to address with changes going forward. One of the other issues is the cap that we currently have, which, as I mentioned initially, is $20,000 currently. It's a very, very generous cash out cap. It's actually the highest for any CCA in California. For that amount of money, the handful of customers that we're currently cutting that level of check for, They're large commercial accounts, some municipal agencies, some schools. But they're not customers that are necessarily trying to, sort of pay off the system on their home. These are commercial institutions that really have essentially an oversized system for their needs. They're not buying electricity from us. We're just tracking credits to them and then giving a large check to them on an annual basis, which is fine for a degree. But we'd like to be a little bit more judicious, I think, with that outlay of money to those customers and that group of people, which is why we're looking to propose lowering that cap. Currently, other CCAs in California have caps of $10,000 or less. So most CCAs are actually doing a calculation where they're not issuing customers a retail credit. They're following the net surplus compensation program. That's actually not something I want to propose for us. It's very complicated. It's not very customer friendly. People don't really like it because it changes the credit amount that you get, at the true up, and people tend to not be very happy with that process. So I'd prefer that we stick with a retail credit, but then just lower our cap amount that we're paying for customers. And so that's what we have proposed going forward. And again, so these are the proposed revisions. Right now, instead of having that $100 threshold for customers, we want to sort of eliminate that, and we want to issue on-bill credits for everyone who has a credit. So if they've got less than $100 credit on their account, we'll go ahead and issue them a credit back up to $500. We'd initially proposed a $300 level when we were looking at this with executive committee, got some questions and feedback that wanted us to consider raising that. We looked at that. We think $500 could be a good threshold amount. So if somebody has a $500 or less credit they've earned from us on their April cash out period, we would send that back to the customer as a credit on bill. When we set it back as a credit on bill, at that point, it flows through and can cover charges on the PG&E side of the account. So it can flow through and cover whatever's happening on PG&E's side. Their monthly interconnection fee can actually cover gas charges, as well. It will sit on the account and be used to cover any charges until it's exhausted. If folks are earning more than $500 in credit, we'll still issue a check to those folks. So basically that's commercial institutions, larger business customers, those are mostly the folks that are earning that higher credit amount. Will still issue a check to those folks. Couple of reasons why I do that is, one, most of those folks actually prefer in that category, the commercial customers prefer to get a check rather than on-bill credit because of the fact that it can impact their budgeting for facility costs. They want to, be able to track those credits in their own way. They may have other expenses that they want to cover, with those funds. And if they're in a scenario where they're generating that much excess energy, they may not be generating enough costs on the other side of the bill and the rest of their bill to absorb those funds. And so we don't want to have credits just sort of hanging out indefinitely on their PG&E account that can never be absorbed. So we think the $500 threshold is a good place to start with that. Doing these on-bill credits will reduce the number of checks we're sending out to customers significantly. It's going to eliminate 75–80% of our checks overall. And it's going to reduce processing costs and give people that money right away, which is really our goal here, is to try to give folks access to those cash right away and reduce the instance of stale checks and having to repeat sending out checks.
So how does it impact that 2% we're talking about?
How will it impact the 2%?
Yeah, does it basically eliminate it? Is that where?
Yeah, it doesn't 100% eliminate, because some of the people that are not cashing checks are larger customers.
Really?
That we have to do a little bit of outreach to, normally because we've got a mismatch on, who's processing the utility bills versus who should be getting the check for the payment, but it'll eliminate most of it, like 99% of it. And then the other proposal that we have is to lower the cash out amount to $10,000, the cap to $10,000. We want to implement that starting this next year. So we'll still keep that $20,000 threshold this year when we do our cash outs. but then starting in April 2025, lower that cash out amount to $10,000. That's gonna impact on average, maybe 5, 8 customers a year that are in that $10,000 to $20,000 category. And again, these are very like large commercial institutions, government facilities and school districts. But you know, these are systems that are significantly oversized for the customer's usage. And we have been sending them very large checks for a long time. We think this is an appropriate time to consider this change in the program. Let's see. So this is a little bit of an analysis that we did for you know, different sort of cash out thresholds and what it would look like for the different how many checks versus credits we'd be looking at. And they were settling on, like we said, the $500 threshold here. And that will eliminate a vast majority of the checks going out. Since this will be a pretty significant change in how we're compensating customers as far as mostly customers getting a credit versus a direct check in the mail. We are going to be doing some additional outreach to folks, email, direct mail, and then direct customer outreach to folks who would be impacted by the lowering of the threshold from $20,000 to $10,000 in the next net metering year. And so our recommendation here, as in the you see in the board report, is to approve these changes going forward, to consider eliminating checks for customers that are receiving credits under $500 during the April cash out period. We'd like to start that this year, so this next cash out period, and then lowering the annual cash out cap from $20,000 to $10,000 beginning next April 2025.
Right, is that it?
Yeah.
All right.
Any questions? Otherwise,
We'll go ahead and open it up to questions from member directors. Yes, Director Higston.
Do we have any, it sounds like there's only 4 accounts according to the staff report, or 5 or 8 accounts, but the handful of accounts that would be affected by lowering the cap, are we at all worried about the relationship with them with PCE by lowering that cap?
I'm not. Our compensation is still quite a bit higher than what they would have been otherwise receiving from PG&E. I don't think that we're at a risk here of losing these folks as customers. Again, most of them are municipal facilities, couple of school districts, and a handful of other businesses. Yeah.
My other question, and I'm not sure if I'm remembering Cheryl's CAC report correctly or not. I don't know if she's on the line, but I thought what I heard was a recommendation that perhaps we could use those credits to help any given body more fully electrify or upgrade to storage.
So what they had initially, they were talking about or asking is if we could do some additional outreach or targeted sort of encouragement for those facilities to do more electrification, to use those credits, consider installing microgrids or other types of electrification projects if they haven't already done that, which is if we're happy to do some outreach about that, but those are all customer decisions that would need to be made if they want to make those investments in their facilities to do those updates. People may or may not be open to doing that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, yes.
Other CCAs.
I'm just gonna say your name so that's on the
Oh,
record.
Rick DeGolia. And my question is, what is the maximum cap that other CCAs have?
Yeah, so some of them don't have a cap, but they're following the net surplus compensation program, which means that they're recalculating the excess generation at a much lower rate, like something in like the 3, 4, 5 cent neighborhood. And some of the folks that do have a cap, they have a cap of like $5,000 or $2,500. It's a little bit, it's not consistent.
My
Yeah.
recollection was that the
highest cap of those that have a cap is $5,000.
I think that might be true. Connor, if you can, if you're on the line, if you wanna check that, that would be great, because I do think that might be true.
Yeah, hello everyone. The highest cap of all the other CCAs is $10,000, and that's a CCA in Edison territory, but they are on the net surplus compensation model. So it's the overall compensation is much lower despite their higher cap. And other than that, all other CCAs are at least $5,000 or less of a cap.
Thank you.
Okay, yes, Director Lorraine.
Thank you. Leslie, thank you for the presentation, and I just feel like I wanted to highlight, I'm not sure if anyone will give public comment, but I know I have at least one constituent who was not terribly thrilled with the $100 cap and was asking me about what we could do about that because he felt that sometimes he would end up around April at about like the 90s or something, and then not get a check, and it because of what he was producing, it seemed as though he was kind of on a plateau and would like his money back. So I'm heartened by what you mentioned about a change we're considering to be able to apply this credit to PG&E costs as well as PCE costs. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I wonder if you could maybe estimate for our benefit about how much that might help a customer in that type of position, or like from 100 to 500 now that we're considering a higher account.
Yeah, so the interesting thing for the folks that are in this scenario where they're excess generators, most of the costs that's on their PG&E side of the bill are gonna be gas, right? Because if they're in excess, they're in one, on PG&E side, they're also on an annual true-up that's not necessarily happening at the same time that we're having our true-up in April. Our seasonal true-up is meant to help customers utilize the full benefit of a seasonal generation of solar, where they're getting their highest generation months tend to be May through October, and then the lowest generation in most consumption is October through April. And so when we're doing that cash out in April, it's so that we're able to give people the most benefit of that excess generation using it throughout the year. And that's how we set up the program to begin with. PG&E's net true-up period is just an anniversary of whenever their system got PTO. So if their system got PTO in July, their true-up is in July. If the system got PTO in October, it's in October. And so for the months that customer is not having their true-up period, their electric charges are only really $10, $12 a month, because they're paying that minimum interconnection fee until they get to their true-up. All the other charges that they have to pay on a monthly basis are gonna be gas charges. So when we push those credits back, it's gonna cover that $10, $12 a month electric charge plus gas charges. Summer tends to be the time of the year when most people have lower gas usage and the cost of gas is lower. So that, credit of up to $500 could potentially cover, someone's bill for 3 or 4 months, where they're not paying anything, because that credit's gonna hold them out over those 3 or 4 months, because they're not gonna be getting charges from us, because they're probably generating extra energy anyways. And then the costs on the PG&E side are pretty low. So it may cover their energy bill for, till like maybe October, potentially. It's just a guess, based on how this stuff works. That's probably a fair estimate.
Yeah, but it sounds like indeed, like this change we're considering about allowing it to apply to PG&E charges will definitely help in reducing, an amount that under the previous model would otherwise maybe have been held for longer or would be harder to use.
Yeah.
Now it can be applied toward gas expenses as well.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Okay, any other questions? All right, we'll open this up to any comments or questions from members of the public. No worries. Anyone in the room? I'll take that first. Okay, there's no one on site. Okay, we have no comments from members of the public. So with that, if everybody has questions answered, I think, is there anyone who would like to make a motion? Support this action to revise the net energy metering NEM annual cash out policy? Okay, we're gonna move to, looks they're gonna win on this one, Marty, I'm sorry. Harvey, Director Warbeck. We'll take your motion and Director Medina, Vice Chair Medina will take your second. How's that? We'll have a roll call vote, please.
Santiago County. Santiago County. Atherton.
Yes.
Belmont.
Yeah.
Ruth Bain.
Yes.
Burlingame.
Yes.
Pullman. Daly City. East Palo Alto.
Yes.
Foster City. Half Moon Bay.
Yes.
Hillsborough.
Yes.
Los Banos.
Yes.
Menlo Park. Mill Brae.
Aye.
Pacifica.
Aye.
Portola Valley.
Aye.
Redwood City. San Bruno.
Yes.
San Carlos.
Yes.
San Mateo.
Yeah.
Cisco. Woodside. Thank you, the motion passes.
Very fantastic. So we'll move on. Thank you, Leslie, very much for that report. I really appreciate the work that you and Connor have done. So we have three big other pretty meaty items, and I just want to warn people. So we're looking at probably like a 9:30 situation right now. So it's really, I don't want to, I just want to make everybody aware that we're gonna be.
And I will also request that staff keep it brief.
Yeah, so we're not out here till the super late hour. So item number 11 is going to be a, just make sure I get the right staff people here on this. Is Nicholas, Nick is going to present a report on the hybrid approach to rate setting methodology. And we'll turn it over to you. It's right up there. And for everyone, you all remember, for the members of the public, our new Chief Financial Officer.
Great, thanks, everyone. I will, I'll try to be quick here. But I want to make sure I leave enough time for everyone's questions. Did present this topic to the executive committee a couple weeks ago and the CAC a couple weeks ago as well, or a week ago or so. I'll be quick on this page since I think everyone is aware, but just to remind everyone or set the context, we obviously offer our customers a net 5% discount to PG&E Generation's cost. This has been a great PR message. It's easy to communicate. We're cheaper, we're greener than PG&E, and it's been consistent since the beginning of time. For the first time ever, earlier this year, we elected not to increase our rates in line with PG&E. And essentially those rates were frozen, at least for the next 6 months. The result of that was a discount to PG&E of greater than 10%. I think it was about 15% for most customers. Another great message that was received by customers. Over the last 6 or 9 months or so, we've been looking at alternative rate setting methodologies. We engaged NewGen, which is a consulting firm in this area, to look specifically at cost of service rate making, and I'll go into the results of that in a second. And the recommendation in this report is based in part on the NewGen work, as well as just the fact that PC is in really great financial shape, and customers, given the economy, they're focused on costs right now. Quickly on the NewGen work, we've been working with them for, I think, over 6 months or so by now. We engaged them last summer, I believe. Spent a lot of time working with them, building out a model. I think the results of the analysis on the right, we had 3 big takeaways. The first one is we were shocked or amazed how much subjectivity is involved in setting rates by customer class. To do this, you have to basically unbundle all your costs. You have to then allocate those costs across the customers. That involves a lot of subjectivity, a lot of judgment. There's no right or wrong answer. And it was amazing to us just how much time that took. And again, sort of how much debate that goes into that thought process. The second takeaway, which we already knew, but it was helpful to see in the analysis, is based on the test years 24 and 25. Our rates do exceed costs across most of our customer classes. There was one exception, so that was nice to see. And the third big takeaway, which I think was probably the big driver of our recommendation, was how much contribution margins vary across our customer classes. Anywhere from -3%, I think, all the way up to, north of 30% or so, which made us question the cost allocation that we went through, given seeing the big variability in those numbers. There's probably multiple rate methodologies we could have looked at. To make it, I wouldn't say simple, but to try and focus our attention, we looked at three main approaches, and I'll go into each of these on the next 3 pages. The first one is what we're currently doing. And again, I probably don't need to spend too much time on this since I think everyone's aware, but since the beginning of time, we have been charging our customers a net 5% discount. When PG&E increases their rates, we in turn increase our rates about a month later, so that our customers have always received, except for right now, a net 5% discount. A lot of positives for this. It's a great message. It's easy. We can say we're cheaper and cleaner than PG&E. It avoids the potential arguments and contention of allocating the cost that I mentioned, and it's really easy to implement. However, there are some considerations, or I guess you could say negatives, which has led us to the exercise that we're going through right now of looking at alternatives. The first one, and the one that, as I've described, gives me the most heartburn, is the fact that our revenues and our rates are set completely independent of PG&E. Of our costs, dependent of PG, independent of our costs. And as I sort of described, I think, to the exec committee, most companies, when they decide how much to charge for a product or a service, they first decide how much does it cost to make a pen or a piece of paper or an iPhone. And then they set prices based on that. We don't do that here in this business model. Our revenues and our rates really have no connection at all to our costs. And I guess our hope, or not really hope, that sounds bad, but the expectation is the revenues will exceed the cost by a small amount. The result of this can have two impacts. The first one is that there could be times when our revenues are not able to cover our costs. This has happened, I think, twice in the history of PCE, not a significant amount, one of which I know was during the COVID pandemic environment. But it can also, on the flip side, have a situation where our rates are maybe higher than they need to be, resulting in increased financial reserves higher than what we were targeting for. And that's a situation that we've been in the last year or so. We did make the decision, as everyone knows, with the Surplus Funds Committee to reallocate those costs to customers. But throughout the last few years, we've been generating excess reserves and may continue to do so unless we make a change, at least for the near future. The second methodology is cost of service, and this is how most utilities, PG&E included, SCE, and I'm guessing most IOUs, set their rates. It's the process that NewGen walked us through. Utilities like PG&E have huge teams going through this exercise, but essentially what they do is they would estimate or forecast the cost of providing service to each customer class, and then set rates based on the cost of that customer class. Many positives of doing this. The first one is rates and revenues would always be forecasted at least to exceed costs. That would result in financial stability, be viewed positively by the rating agencies, by counterparties. The other main benefit is there could be years when our rates are significantly less than PG&E's, as we are right now, where the discount of PG&E could be greater than 5%, 10, 15, maybe 20%. So a lot of positives of this. There are some considerations which give us a little second guessing on going down this approach. The first one, and I mentioned this before, and we learned this in the NewGen work, is how much subjectivity there is in allocating those costs across customer class. Again, it's almost a black box. A lot of judgment has to go into allocating things like Sean's salary, my salary, demand charges, fixed costs, and you have to make a lot of estimates on how to allocate those costs, energy costs, G&A costs, and that can be a very contentious process. The other big consideration, and we would do our best to try and minimize this, if not eliminate it, is that there could be years and times when PC's rates are higher than PG&E's. Again, we would hope that wouldn't happen, but there is a risk under this situation that just to recover the cost that that it takes to serve our customers, the revenues might be higher than what would otherwise be charged under our current methodology. The other consideration is the communication. Right now, every customer gets a 5% discount. When you go into a community meeting, it's an easy message to say. Customers, big and small, commercial, residential, are getting 5% discount. Under a cost of service approach, there really would be no connection to PG&E. Some customers could get a 15% discount, some a 5%, some may even pay a premium. It depends on the cost allocation methodology. The third approach, which we call hybrid, which I realize is not really a great technical term, it's a little bit of both. We think, and this is, as you've probably seen, jump to the conclusion, is what we're recommending. It takes, we think, the best of the first two approaches that I described. It is a form of cost of service rate making, in that what we would do, and I'll try and do my best to explain what we're thinking here, is we would estimate the cost of providing service for the agency as a whole. So just to use numbers, since at least for me, I like when I put it into something I can grasp a hold of. And these are somewhat close numbers, don't quote me on it. If it's costs $400 million for us to service all of our customers over the next year, we would calculate how much revenues we think we need. Maybe it's 401 million. Again, I'm not saying those are the numbers, but in this example, we would say we want to collect $401 million of revenue to cover the $400 million of costs. What we would then do is we would sort of, I use the word reverse engineer, and that doesn't sound great, but we would basically calculate almost through a solver type approach in Excel, what is the discount across all of our customers that would allow us to collect that $401 million of revenues. And that would be a one discount that would be applied to everyone. And again, I'm making up numbers, maybe that number's 11.5%. So we would then apply that discount to all commercial, industrial, residential customers to generate that $401 million of revenue. The pros of this, the first three, are the same exact pros as full cost of service. Always collecting enough revenues to cover our costs, financial stability, and potentially, ideally, rates that are significantly below PG&E. But there are two additional benefits that we think make this approach a lot better than the full cost of service. The first one is it avoids that argument, that contention, the subjectivity of how do you allocate costs across customers. PG&E phase 2 of their general rate case takes months to litigate. It's a very contentious process. As you can imagine, every customer class is arguing for less costs allocate to them. And this would basically take that out of the equation. We would be deferring to PG&E's cost allocation. And the last one, the additional benefit here is it's a consistent message. Again, everyone would be getting the same discount. It would change each year. It wouldn't be 5% as it is now, year after year, but everyone would be getting the same discount, and you could easily communicate that, put it on your website, and compare it to PG&E. The one main consideration that we can't get rid of, so to speak, is that there could be years, again, I stress that we would hope this wouldn't be the case, and we would at least do our best to minimize, if not eliminate this risk, where potentially PC rates could be higher than PG&E's. And that's just, one of the downsides of this approach. Again, we would do our best to hope that this doesn't happen. The other thing I will say is people have asked me, I think through the executive committee as well as in the CAC meeting, we would continue to allocate and invest in all of our customer programs. That would not change at all here. It would just be included into the budgeting process. So when we were forecasting costs, in the example I used before, $400 million, that would include the cost of energy, it would include the cost of staff, and it would importantly include the cost of all our customer programs. So we would forecast that, commit to the funds, and just make sure we collected enough in rates to cover those costs. Always helpful to do benchmarking. So we put some data here. Unfortunately, there isn't a clear winner, so to speak, all the CCAs follow. You can see each of the three approaches have several CCAs in their category. We would put our logo on the PG&E minus on the left there, so we've got some company there. There are 2 CCAs who have implemented recently full cost of service rate making, CPA, which is the CCA down in LA, and then 3CE. And then the hybrid approach you can see is been implemented at least for MCE since the beginning of time, as well as Sonoma and Silicon Valley Clean Energy. So in conclusion, again, we are recommending adopting this quote hybrid approach, which we think has the best of the PG&E minus and cost of service. We think it ensures financial stability, maximizes discounts, avoids the potential contention, and you have a consistent message. As far as next steps, we have already started our budgeting process to forecast costs, cost of energy, cost of the energy programs. Pending board approval of this approach, we would then go through the exercise that I described before of calculating what is the revenue requirement, so to speak, and what is the discount to PG&E. And then we would implement those rates on ideally August 1. I know someone asked me this question, it's not on the page, but the plan would be rates would be in effect for a year, a fiscal year from August 1 to August 1. We know customers don't like a lot of volatility in their rates, so they would be set. But as we have today, we have the ability, if something drastic changes, if cost of energy blows through the roof or hopefully goes down, we could adjust rates, and we would adjust rates sort of mid-cycle if needed. So sorry, I went through that quickly, but wanted to catch us up on some time.
Can I make one comment before we open it up? And that is, I think it's important to remember that even in our, if you go to option 1, which is the current status, to my knowledge, there's no stated policy right now that requires PCE to be 5% below. This board has always made the decision to hold that, even when you had to dip into reserves. But I did want to make it clear that there could always have been an opportunity to have rates above PG&E, even in that first option. The board chose not to do that. So I just want to make that clear. That's not a stated policy.
Okay, so thank you very much for the presentation. We'll go ahead and entertain questions. We'll start off with Tom, please. We have Director McHugh, please.
Okay, 2 quick questions. Is anybody complaining about the current system? And number 2, if you did implement this, which classes of service or which types of customers would see the greatest change, either positive or negative?
I don't know if we've had any complaints. I don't think so, but
Well, one general complaint that we hear
It's too expensive.
is that we
Too much.
we are, just to be blunt, sitting on a lot of cash.
Right.
And that we're a public agency. So that's probably the biggest driver for why this conversation is happening this evening. As for the second, I believe
everyone would get the same.
That's right.
Impact. There'd be no change per customer class.
That's right.
Under the hybrid approach. On the cost of service, there would be a reallocation and it would be very different.
Director Rohrabaugh.
On the existing cost allocation, you clearly have an idea what the revenue is, and then you can finance these programs that we have, which are wonderful for the most part, based on that. How are you going to determine what an equitable allocation of revenue toward programs would be if you went into this hybrid approach?
I'm gonna answer that?
Yeah, sure.
So I think we would do it just the way we do now. So we were right in the midst of budget season right now. So the programs team looks at what the plans are. We then discuss it as a team, and it's then elevated up as part of the overall budget. The reason that we're bringing this to you tonight is that we need your guidance, right? To know whether or not we should, sorry, that's item 13. But this will help us when we discuss the June rate change. So programs are not affected. That's all just part of the budget process. And then we set rates according to what our revenue requirements are to cover all of those costs, including programs.
But the amount allocated to programs is not. I don't know how you determine that in an equitable way, that's my question.
Based on budget.
I mean, I don't know, Raphael, if you're on the line, but I think that my general response to that would be that we have a very well-developed set of programs and a substantial increase in budget over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So we're not looking to stymie that. We're, you know, it's according to need and according to customer demand that would then drive what that budget allocation should be for all of our programs. And then we'll do the whole budget and you will determine through that process whether or not that's an appropriate percentage of the overall budget.
I mean, I think the situation, nothing would change, my understanding. In the past, there was a similar budget exercise where Raphael and his team would go through and forecast how much cost we should spend under his multiple programs. The only situation, the difference is over the last year, we generated extra revenue. So we came up with a situation where what do we do with this extra? And we allocated more to customer programs over the next few years. But, you know, we're starting the process now. Raphael and his team, they go through, you know, how much should go to EVs, how much should go to home electrification, what's the market? You know, that's their, I don't want to speak for Raphael, but it's a long exercise and very detailed analysis.
Does Raphael have a comment?
Oh, Raphael's on, yeah.
And then
Hi, directors, and I apologize that I'm not there in person, but Sean and Nick have covered it from the standpoint of how the process works. We do projections with regards to how much we think the uptake will be in particular programs, and that really has guided the estimates that we put in the budgets. Of course, our programs have been growing, and we've been fortunate enough to be able to fund that growth. We do anticipate, though, looking ahead, you know, maybe 3 years out or so, that programs will have to level off from the standpoint of PCE funds. And as a consequence, we are increasingly looking to other sources, and that has included looking at federal earmarks. And of course, Sean and the executive team were in DC talking to legislators around those opportunities, and there are a number of other opportunities that we're pursuing as well. So we're not solely relying on PCE funds.
Director DeGolia.
Yeah, so in January, we decided not to change rates, which resulted in variable discounts in the range of 10 to 15% across the different classes. Can you estimate what the average is?
I believe it's 13%, Leslie, average. I know it's hard to get an exact number.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually probably a little bit more, it's a little bit higher because the discount is a little bit higher. Resident, I mean, most of the residential rates is on the community rates, it's closer to 10% rates. But yeah, 14% is probably 13% is probably fair. Yeah.
But what we did in January is essentially what we're recommending to carry forward. It's, you know, sort of continuing on with the practice of understanding where PG&E is, understanding what we need, and using both ends of that story to figure out what is the right thing to do for our customers in terms of rates.
But the difference is that we would be setting a discount, so we take the 13%.
Yeah.
If that was what we carried
Yeah, I
forward.
mean, the difference is we just wanted to keep rates stable, so we
Yeah,
didn't
no,
go
I
through a
understand.
full exercise, but exactly.
But that's why I'm asking
Yeah.
for what the estimate on the percentage.
And if we had gone through this exercise, maybe it could have been more than 13. We just didn't want to change rates.
Right.
Yes, Dr. Taylor.
So I have two questions. One for you, Nick. Were you able to model sort of our costs versus PG&E's costs for, like, say, the next 5 years? Like, how likely is it that our costs would exceed the PG&E costs?
I'd put it at a pretty low likelihood that our costs would exceed PG&E's.
I mean, that's what it feels. I mean, that feels like, although I understand that's a possible consideration, it doesn't sound like a very likely one. And then Sean, the question I have for you is, how much of an issue is it that we are carrying a large cash balance as a public agency? Because I have to say that this 5% message that we send out to the public is an extremely strong message. And anytime you move away from that, even if it's better, even if people are gonna save more, they won't get it. I mean, and I think at some level, we lose some of our marketing power in being able to just go to people and say, we're always cheaper than PG&E. End of story, none of this, we might be more, we might be less, blah, blah, blah. And so
But here's
if
the
we
thing.
carry this big amount of cash, what are the issues around that? Because that's not like the biggest negative.
So a couple comments. One is this board could choose in every year to always be below PG&E if we choose to fall below our minimum threshold, right? That's what this board did in 2020 and 2021.
In other words, we ran a negative deficit.
That's right.
And we funded the delta out of reserve retained earnings.
That's right. And that was a board choice and could still be made going forward. You might recall, I don't know if you were here for this meeting, but as part of the surplus fund effort, there were a couple of recommendations, one of which was to maintain our minimum reserve at 180 days cash on hand, but to set an upper target, not policy, but a target of 250 days cash on hand, over which this board would consider, or I think, yeah, would consider.
No, we took the word consider out.
And said will, right?
Yeah.
Will. Reduce rates for customers so that we don't have a cash balance of generally in the range of 250 days cash on hand. We were pushing up and have been, I believe it's like 380 days.
Yeah.
We're a public agency. We're not here to.
We're not shareholder based.
Yeah, to
We're-
collect, we're not paying shareholders and we're not here to collect so much excess revenue, especially in a time when people need the discount.
The other comment I'll add on that is the rating agencies with whom we have all met on multiple occasions have made it very clear to us that if we were to, that when we run these sort of negative deficit years, if we were not willing to actually increase rates to be profitable, then our rating will be downgraded, which has an impact on our cost of capital, funds, and other things. So there are sort of outside extraneous business management forces that are sort of also playing into this, just as kind of a side note.
There's also, I mean, if you have a large healthy reserve, I mean, that plays into that calculation.
It does, but I can tell you, I ran on Fitch, Moody's, S&P, and every single one of them said, they asked us the point blank question, will you raise rates if you are running a negative deficit? And if you say no, they're gonna ding you and we're gonna have a downgrade on rating.
And did you consider the hybrid or something of we just do 5%? I mean, and if we end up with surplus, then we give it back to customers. So we have a consistent public message, 5%. And I hear you on that. So I think we could still say if we need to raise our rates, we would. That's our case right now. With 5%, it's not a guarantee. It's 5% is our sort of stated goal, but we could change that. But you could then at the end of the year say, oh, we have this bonus and we'll give it back. That still seems like a very strong public message because it's consistent at 5%. If we have too much excess, at the end of the year, you say, in addition, we're so wonderful, we'll give you this as well. So I get the
essentially what
financial
we did.
side. I'm trying to figure out the, you know.
That's what we did. It is what we did for the surplus funds
Right.
exercise, which took a lot of time. And you know, so it is an option. I think that we've had so much positive response to freezing rates. It's been phenomenal. And being able to say that your bill is somewhere between 10 and 18% in some cases in Los Banos. So I hear you what you're saying about the consistency, but I think what we're shooting to do is a greater than 5% discount that cuts across all customer classes. But your point is taken.
And it feels to me like we're holding rates steady. The strong part of that message is relative to PG&E. It's not so much that we're holding them steady and therefore you get 10%. It's that we're holding them steady when PG&E, I think we're winning because of our relative position to PG&E. And that's what I like about the 5%, because it's relative to PG&E. It gives people something to go, it could be this, and you guys are the good guys. So anyway, thank you. I mean, I appreciate it.
points.
Oh, yes.
There's a.
Oh, Paul,
yeah.
please. Director Yanes.
Hello. So I just want to make a quick comment that with a hybrid approach, I'm a huge fan. Explain the why. And that's something that just my constituents, they want to know is why are the rates what they are, whether it's a discount, a big discount, whatever it is, just help me explain the why. And the other thing too is I really think this helps you guys, because in the end, you're trying to separate from PG&E and you're on the PG&E bill, right? And that's the big thing in Los Banos is how can I help keep customers on PCE and not jump off? And so this would help me in my approach to do that.
Thank you very much for that comment. Director, I'm gonna go with Director Romero and then Director Tiger, that big stick.
It's fine to call them.
That's okay. The only reason I'm calling everybody out formally is so that Nellie has it on the record who's speaking. You know, we have 2 Tiger Jazzes, so.
In terms of the CCA benchmarking, those that are using the hybrid approach, have they been using the hybrid approach from inception? Do we know?
We confirmed MCE has, that's.
And the other two, Sonoma and Silicon Valley, because this is.
But we could check for you.
Okay, because this does speak to the question that was just brought up about the 5%, right? Because if those customers are used to whatever marketing was used, right, to get them on board, right, that's fine. But if we're gonna change in the middle of the screen, then, you know, does the 5%, which, you know, I'm hearing, you know, Craig had the point, right? Is that somehow gonna have negative impact? Because we are changing, right? And we have to figure out some way to then market that, and we have a great marketing group. But we'll have to market that so that people don't feel that indeed we're.
What I can say about Silicon Valley is that their rate discounts change every year. And that's been the case. They were a client. And that has been the case. I'm not sure about Sonoma. But Silicon Valley's generally been between 1% and 4% since inception.
And then a question on the cost of service approach, and I just don't understand, what does it mean to, how do costs vary between customer class? And is it because of the total amount of consumption? What does that mean to have costs vary by class?
Customers use energy different ways, and it costs more or less different times of the day.
So it's the time of day.
Some time of day, it's demand charges, it's mostly how they use energy.
So it does seem to be some sort of calculatable figure, right, by class. It's possible. But
Yeah, that's the attempt of the analysis, is to do our best.
And then can you give me an example? It's hypothetical, but can you give me an example of when, let's say, PCE's rates might be higher than PG? What might be the circumstances that lead to that condition?
What?
PCIA.
And Jeremy can.
If other energy costs. We feel very aggressive goal. Which leads into our next discussion here. If we pursue a very progressive renewable goal, and it's very expensive to achieve that goal. And while PG&E doesn't have a very high percentage, our costs might be higher than PG&E's. That's a possibility. That's one many our journey to speak to a possibility.
Yeah, Jeremy Wayne, Director of Regulatory Policy. I've had the privilege of being in the cramped conference rooms with no windows where we negotiate a phase 2 GRC and figure out how much streetlights should pay versus agriculture versus so forth in PG&E service area. And it's not a fun process. It's, I think, overly generous to say it's a true cost of service model too. There's a lot of history there and a lot of horse trading going on. The years where we would either need to charge a rate higher than PG&E or take a loss and take from reserves are really the years where market conditions are at very low levels. And the reason being the PCIA, the power charge and difference adjustment, is largely the biggest variable year over year of impacting how much revenue we can collect from customers. That coupled with how much PG&E's generation rates move year over year. And presently in the market, we're seeing exceptionally high costs for capacity and exceptionally high costs for renewable attributes. And the constraints that are driving those costs don't seem to be, it doesn't seem to be a magical solution on the horizon. They're going to persist for some time. But for that worst case scenario, it'd be an environment where just the wholesale market cost of power drops. We have suddenly an abundance of power plants and no capacity constraints, and the cost of RA is plummeted. And we have an overwhelming abundance of renewable energy with an abundance of renewable energy credits. And right now, frankly, we're threading the eye of the needle, and we're not in an abundant market by any means. So in the next few years, I think it's a very unlikely probability that we'd hit that scenario, but that's kind of what that scenario would look like.
So just one last question, just to qualify then, there are variable costs that PCE incurs that, let's say, the investor-owned utilities don't, and those could throw it into a question. You're talking about RA, things of that nature. If PG&E is, has to incur those same costs, then I don't see the imbalance happening. But if we're talking about a set of costs that we, in order to do the business as CCAs incur, that are not incurred by PG&E, that would make sense that indeed there could be that imbalance, and ergo we could have, this overpricing, this underpricing on our side. But am I misunderstanding?
Without getting too deep in the weeds, we buy energy capacity RECs, so does PG&E. It all depends upon what's in our portfolio and how much of an open position for all those things we have. The PCIA, the power charge and difference adjustment, collects costs that are deemed above the market and above market benchmarks. And so it's when those low market conditions hit, the benchmarks plummet, and the amount of revenue that has to be collected from our customers through that PCIA charge balloons. Right now, we're at a relatively historic low, but
so it sounds like it's PCIA to a certain extent
driver.
driving it, which has been the bane of argument from the beginning.
Right.
Yep.
And that's been true at MCE. I'm a customer of MCE, and so it's my understanding that most of the time, when their rates have been a bit higher, it has been temporary, but a function of the PCIA.
This is also why you see true cost of service leveraged much more in municipal utility space than in the investor-owned utility space. There's no PCIA that they're having to reconcile within their own rate setting.
Not that I would understand what it looks like in the black box, but when and if we move to that, I think it'd be helpful for the Finance and Audit Committee to kind of look at the black box, right? Just to understand, the various factors and
allocating costs across customers.
Yeah, because there's nothing that says we couldn't go to full cost of service at some point in the future. Right now, that's not what we're recommending.
Let me get Director to Big Stick real quick and then Director.
So there's something I think that's relatively basic that I'm trying to recall, and correct me if my recollection is wrong. My understanding was between the 180 days cash on hand and the 250 days cash on hand, if say we ran a year with a deficit, we would have a conversation as a board. Is it worth it to us to take the rating hit that year to maintain the 5% to make sure our customers have that satisfaction? Or should we go to something like a cost of service model? Whereas if we hit the 180 days cash on hand, we go to the cost of service model. That's more or less my understanding of what we currently have in place. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think the current construct is if we go below 180 days, we say we will increase rates, not cost of service. We will increase rates to get back above 180 days.
Okay,
That was the change made in January.
that was the nuance that I was missing. So that having been said, if we were to go to the hybrid approach, would that mean potentially if our rates wind up being higher than PG&E's, we no longer have this sense of a buffer where we're having that conversation, maybe if, and when we get there, then it's definitely higher. And we're effectively eliminating that buffer.
I don't know if I'd call it eliminating the buffer, but we would essentially be taking that decision of, if it goes below 180 days, we'll increase rates out of the equation, because we'd be saying we are always going to collect enough revenue to cover our costs and stay above 180 days on a forecasted basis. Let's assume our forecasts are reasonably accurate. So it would be a very rare situation where you would be below the 180 days. And if we did, we would adjust rates mid-cycle, as we talked about.
So what I'm
Does that make
saying
sense?
is that, yeah, it makes sense. I'm very comfortable with having some sort of buffer so that we can have a conversation around what it's worth to us to maintain that very specific messaging that I think is very helpful to the organization from the customer perspective. And I don't know what that means on the deliberative side yet, except that what occurs to me is I really like having a buffer somewhere in the equation so that we have a little more control over where our messaging lands. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Okay, I want to be clear, the buffer, I think if I'm following you, Director, so that's the helpful target that the board set at 250 days cash on hand was helpful. Because it does give us this band of 180 at the bottom, 250 on top. We're probably not going to be budgeting right to 180 to create that buffer, because there will be variability in the markets and all of that. So, we've got smart budgeting here, and but it was helpful to get that upper end 250 days. So that equation helps us and helps the board set rates within that, probably that upper target.
Okay.
Does that help you?
That does.
Thank you.
Okay, Director Mecca.
So I'm gonna throw a monkey wrench into the whole thing. I'm gonna offer the counterpoint argument in that I'm hearing the importance of the marketing message of the 5% discount. My feedback from my constituents has been the opposite. 5%, that's nothing, is what they said to me. PCE is supposed to be nonprofit, and that's the best they can do. That's what I've heard. I think the integrity of the organization, being able to say, when we can offer you an extremely good deal, you get it. And the proof's in the pudding. So at times people know, okay, power's up right now. Everybody hears those messages that we have that integrity. What you get is the best deal consistently that we can offer you. And we're going to exceed that 5%. I think based on the rate freeze right now, we've gotten so much more, not just integrity, but publicity. That 5% could be just meaningless, where in the rearview mirror, we'll say, why were we stuck on 5% when we could do better?
I should have had you give the presentation.
So I hope you will consider that even if we have to raise it, it may not be for an extended period of time, and it goes back down. So the customer perception is not every month checking, is it 5% or 10%? There could be some people doing that, but most people don't. And if they see consistently, while PG&E's getting all these rate increases for everything, that PCE is offering a really good deal, I think we come out better. Yes, please. Yes.
So there are a lot of people in this room way smarter around the topic of economic forecasting than I am. But going into the next election cycle, frankly, there is, to my simple mind, a very basic level of uncertainty about what is coming down the pike, depending on how things go in the next 4 years. And depending on how that lands, while I totally agree with you, I feel like consistency could, under certain circumstances, be a saving grace.
So could we have a middle ground?
Oh, totally, I'm not, you know,
So, no, perfect, okay. So I think, just in order to move this along, I think we have explored, and delved very deeply into this. The staff's recommendation is a hybrid approach, which I think gives them a lot of leeway to take into consideration the comments that were provided this evening. And
This is an action item.
no, I understand. It's an action item and I want to get an action on it. And what I'm saying is the recommendation of the staff is to do the hybrid approach, which includes both elements of PG&E minus and cost of service. They've heard, I think, from the committee, the importance of keeping a discount, the importance of making it at least 5%, if not more. And this model probably gives them the most flexibility to address all of the concerns today. So is there anyone here who would like to make a motion? Well, let's take public comment, excuse me, first. Are there any members of the public who would like to comment on this agenda item? Nope. Okay, anyone here? Nope. Okay, so we'll close public comment. So in sort of summarizing this, the staff has recommended the hybrid approach. It sounds to me like this, you've heard some of the comments back. With the hybrid approach, it feels to me that we are in the most flexible spot to do this. This is not permanent. We can review it in a year and see how it goes, take a look at it. I think we should review it in a year, put it on our file. And so with that said, would there be anyone here willing to make a motion to accept the staff's recommendation?
Before we get the motion, you're bringing up something I didn't hear in the presentation. So I guess my question to Steph is, do you imagine factoring in your public messaging as part of the finances? Because all I heard was a sound, logical financial approach, which I appreciate from the CFO. But that's what I'm hearing from you is something different. I'm hearing you say, well, there's this, but then there's all this other flexibility, so we could add based on marketing and other stuff. So I'm trying to understand, is that what the hybrid is being proposed as?
Yes, I think there is some flexibility. I was talking to Carlos before the meeting. In full candidacy, we haven't ticked every box on how this is gonna be implemented. It's a philosophy that we think. We want to go through the budgeting process. I'm envisioning pulling the costs together, looking where PG&E's rates are gonna come out and coming out with a recommendation which needs to be approved by the board in June. I use that example of 400 million, we're gonna collect 401, just as, but it could be, if it's 5.5% is the number, maybe we say, let's just keep it at 5, or if it's 3, maybe we say we want to keep it at 5. We also have this range of 180 days to 250 that we can kind of, I want to say play around with, but it gives us the flexibility of where the number will end up being on depending on where PG's rates are and other factors. So I'm sorry.
But it does include marketing. Is that your question? Like, how will we market this or?
I mean, I think Nick did a pretty good job of answering the question, because I mean, it obviously includes marketing costs in the budget, but that's a different thing. It's more, if we could do 5.5, do we just do 5? Or we're gonna do 3, but we decide because of marketing, we wanna say it was 3, but we're gonna do 5 and use up some of our reserves.
Yes, and that would be coming to the board. That's all your decision.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So anyway, that's what I heard from Don. Thank you, Jim.
All right. Okay, I'll take
Second.
I'll take Director Lorraine, and then as the motion, I have a second from Director Big Stick. We'll get you next time, Colleen. Try to be fair to everybody. And with that, we'll go ahead and we'll have a roll call vote, please.
I just missed that for a second. I got the motion. Second was Mackie?
Second was Big Stick.
Oh, who was first?
And the primary was Director Lorraine.
Oh, way off.
That's why I kind of.
Yeah,
All
okay.
those out for you.
Thank you.
You're
San Diego
welcome.
County? San Mateo County, Atherton,
Yes.
Belmont,
Yeah.
Brisbane,
Yes.
Burlingame,
Yes.
Colma, Daly City, East Palo Alto,
Yeah.
Foster City, Half Moon Bay, Hillsborough,
Yes.
Yes.
Los Banos,
Yes.
Menlo Park, Millbrae, Pacifica, Portola Valley, Redwood City, San Bruno,
Yeah.
San Carlos, San Mateo,
Yes.
South San Francisco, Woodside. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Motion carries unanimously. If anyone needs to take a bio break, go ahead and do it real quick. While we're doing that, I would just like to, we absolutely have to get to item number 13 tonight. We need to do it for critical path reasons.
We have to do both, but.
We have to do both. Okay, so do you want to do 12 first then?
No, let's do 13. It's,
12 is not an action item, so if we lose.
that's true.
So
Yeah,
we lose the-
We'll just need to have extra brain
Yeah.
cells next month.
So we just, yeah, in order to make sure we have a quorum, we hit 13. So if it's the board's pleasure, I would request by consensus that we, even though we have set the agenda, if you would be willing, we would take item 13 first and then item 12 second in that order. Is that all right with everyone?
Yes.
Okay. Right, fantastic. So we're gonna move on to item 13. Everybody, please take your break and then come back, because I know you can hear everything. This is a report on the approval of revisions to PCE's organizational priority number 1 of the strategic plan from delivering 100% renewable energy annually by 2025 to delivering 100% renewable energy annually by 2030 through strategic resources to maximize PCE's 24/7 hourly match goal. I'm gonna turn this over to CEO Sean Marshall.
Okay, before we turn it over to Roy, our Director of Power Resources, I do want to just make 2 quick corrections in the staff report for the record. The first of which is on page 2 of the staff report in the last paragraph, second line. It needs to say, due to the reduced availability of new long-term resources, Peninsula Clean Energy would need to rely more on short-term PCC1 RECs to meet its stated renewable target, removing the word hourly. That's just that's a technical change to be completely accurate. Then scrolling down on page 4, in the top third of the document, under the mid-cost option, the first bullet says annual renewable percentage between 2025 and 2029 will continue on an upward trajectory with a minimum of 62%, but will remain flexible based on available, et cetera. The change here is to 60%. Roy will say more about why that is. And I will also just say that 60% is the California State RPS in 2030. So that's a benchmark that the state has set for 2030.
All right.
Those changes, that's all for me, and I'll turn it over to Roy.
I also want to acknowledge that Mehdi was part of this work as well.
And he will be presenting part of it.
Okay, great.
Yes, indeed, thank you. Are we good to go? Can we get started?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Okay, good evening, members of the board. Roy Shu, Director of Power Resources. I'll be co-presenting this item with Mindy Shariari, our Manager of Planning and Analytics in Power Resources. So the item before you today is to update, or a recommendation to update our 100% renewable and annual renewable goal. Don't think that, okay, all right. Thank you. So quick agenda, we're gonna go over some background information on why we are revisiting the goal. And Mandy is going to present more details on the cost of energy analysis, which will feed into next year's budget. And then we'll present the considerations for decision and options we have on the table. And then finally, staff's recommendation, this item. Okay, so just to preview the recommendation here. We have in PCE a strategic plan, and one of the organizational priority in strategic plan is to deliver 100% renewable energy annually by 2025. And staff's recommendation today will be changing that statement to delivering 100% renewable energy annually by 2030 through strategic procurement of resources to maximize Peninsula Clean Energy's 24/7 hourly renewable matching. And we'll get into reasons why we are pushing out the goal to 2030. We have a few background slides. And the first one, again, is to reiterate our goal. Our organization priority number 1 has 2 components. The first component is delivering 100% renewable energy annually by 2025, and that is the piece we're addressing today. And we also have the second part to this goal, which is meeting a 99% time coincident renewable target or hourly matching target by 2027, which we will address in the next board meeting in April. We also have a power resource strategic goal number 1 that says secure sufficient low-cost clean sources of electricity that achieve Peninsula Clean Energy's priorities while ensuring reliability and meeting regulatory mandates. So what we're finding out now is that there are some conflicts between these 2 priorities or goals. To achieve 100% renewable energy annually by 2025 is now turning into be very expensive, and we'll be getting to why in a little bit. But really, we are trying to balance both priorities here, namely affordability and achieving a high renewable content in the near term. So this kind of feeds into that earlier conversation we talked about, cost of service and power resources, and cost of energy represents 90% of PC's budget. So in order to achieve the high renewable content, it's going to be very expensive. So we have to balance affordability and a high target. In terms of timeline, again, we're trying to address the first part of the strategic plan or organization priority today, the March board meeting. And that's because we need to have those decisions made so we can have the numbers ready for budget preparation for fiscal year 24-25. And in April, we will be taking the second part of this goal on the 24/7 hourly matching back to the board for consideration with a recommendation. And we will then reflect any adopted changes to either goal in the strategic plan during the mid-year review at the May 13th Executive Committee meeting. And in June, we'll have the fiscal year 24-25 budget reflecting what we decide today, how to address the 2025 goal. Any questions so far? Okay. So before we get into, oh, it's not working. Okay, great. Before we get into the details of the analysis, it'll be helpful to understand some of the terminologies we'll be using throughout the presentation. So the next 2 slides will be more educational in nature. Hopefully you can follow along. So the first term that we want to define here is eligible renewable energy resources. And that is defined by the California's Renewable Portfolio Standard, what we call RPS. You might have heard that term before. And eligible renewable resources include wind, solar, geothermal, biomass, and eligible small hydro. And there's also biogas, which we do not have in our portfolio. And then the RPS requirement by the state requires certain minimum percentage of retail sale by the LSE, low service entity like us, to be served by X% renewable every year. There's a minimum target. And this year's target is 44% for 2024. And they will go slightly, it will increase every year until 2030 will reach 60% minimum. That's what Sean mentioned earlier. So that's how we define renewable resources and RPS percentage. And we've often heard a term about REC, a renewable energy credit. A REC is generated by producing 1 megawatt-hour of generation from eligible renewable energy resources. So 1 megawatt-hour of solar generation generates 1 REC. And there are 3 categories of REC. There is the PCC 1 REC, or portfolio content category 1. And that is the most valuable type of REC in the market. And it is bundled energy and REC, meaning the energy and the environmental attribute is bundled together and it's traceable to a resource. It's typically in-state, or it's a resource that's interconnected to the California grid. Or if it's out of state, it has to be dynamically transferred to the state, like our SunZia project will be dynamically transferred, so it's still considered PCC1. PCC2 are those out-of-state renewable resources that has defined environmental attributes, but bundled with substitution energy, not directly from that particular resource. So we're taking the environmental attributes, bundled with some kind of energy, and importing to the state. So that's PCC2. It's not as valuable as PCC1 because the substitution energy could be from an emitting resource. And then there's PCC3, or what we call unbundled REC. So that's like an orphan REC. It doesn't have an energy. We don't know where that energy came from, but it's just one attribute that we can buy from the market. It's the least valuable of the three. And then we have greenhouse gas free resource or carbon free resource. And in our portfolio, it's just large hydro and nuclear. And in PCE, we only procure large hydro. Any questions on the terminology?
PCC2 makes no sense. I mean, like out of state renewable bundled with substitute energy, could the energy be coal?
Yeah, it's shaped and firmed. It could be gas. Am I looking at Sarah? Could it be coal? We don't know. It's unspecified power. Yeah. So, and that's why on the next slide, we will see that PCC2 will show up as emission. On the power content label, it will show up on the emission side of the graph. So this is our 2022 power content label. This is so small that I can't even see from here. But if you look at on the right side, everybody should have received this in the mail, the power content label every year. We don't have the 2023 power content label yet, so this is the latest. If you look at under Eco Plus, the eligible renewable, that's the first row, it shows about 52% renewable. And almost 48%, 49% large hydro, and that is our portfolio for Eco Plus, and that is 100% clean. And then Eco 100 is composed of 50% solar and 50% wind. And on the left, you will see the emission content. So for PCE, there's only 9 pounds of CO2 from 2022 compared to states 422 pounds average. And I circled in purple our emission. That's the 9 pounds, and that's solely from our geothermal portfolio under Eco Plus. Geothermal is considered renewable RPS under RPS, but it does the current the existing portfolio renewable geothermal does emit a little bit, generate a little bit of emissions. So that's our current portfolio. So PCC1 REC so everything under eligible renewable on that first row is PCC1 REC for PCE. And it generates, other than geothermal, it doesn't generate any emissions. We do not have any PCC2 REC. If we do have PCC REC, this is how it's going to show up on the power content label. It will still be under eligible renewable, but then on the bar graph to the left, it will increase the emission. And then PCC3 will show up not under the eligible renewable, but it will show up as the unspecified power to the right, more to the bottom of the table. And they will also show on the last row as a bundled REC, and they will also show up as emissions on the emission graph. And then we have greenhouse gas free resources, large hydro. That's also on the power content label to the right. So what are we trying to get to here is a clarification that PCC one is a bundled product. It's something that we, PCE, has been authorized by the board to procure. We don't buy PCC two, we don't buy PCC three. And then the Eco 100 product is 100% renewable, 100% greenhouse gas free, and 100% clean. Our Eco Plus is 100% clean, is more than 50% renewable, and it is not 100% greenhouse gas free only because we have that little bit of emission from our geothermal in our portfolio. Now, a lot of this content is created by our customer service group. Leslie, I'm not sure if did I capture this correctly?
Yeah.
Anything to add?
And I think that was the one thing that we were talking about with Roy about is I know there's just been a little bit of confusion over the years with the greenhouse gas free and clean. Part of that, I mean, a big part of that issue is geothermal got some emissions assigned to it in the very recent past. Within the last few years, there were changes in how RPS, the RPS standard assigned emissions, and a little bit of emissions started getting assigned to some geothermal facilities, where in the past geothermal was sort of considered free, clean, and renewable. So it's still a very renewable, very good, very stable resource. It's a good resource, a good energy mix for us, but it does have a tiny bit of emissions, which is why we have a little bit of emissions in our Eco Plus product, even though it is a clean product overall. So there you go.
Any questions on the power constant label? Because we'll be using some of these terms later on in the presentation. I'll make sure everybody understands what they represent. Go ahead.
So at the risk of going too deep in the weeds, which I sort of feel we are right now, I did just want to see if I could clarify with the PCC1's Rex. Is it safe to, and I'm sorry if you actually explained this already, but is it safe to say that we're buying some of these both for Eco 100 customers and Eco Plus customers?
That's correct.
Okay, that was helpful to me. Thank you.
Okay.
Did you get to the additionality already?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. Okay. So this is a snapshot of our renewable content or renewable percentage with our current resource portfolio, composed of mostly long-term resource contracts. And it's projected to go to 68% renewable, RPS renewable by 2025. And then it starts to increase to 78%, 86%, 2027 because of SunZia project coming online. And then it kind of decreases from that point forward because we have existing contracts that will expire. So this is a very conservative assumption on the left, because we have not included several of our PPAs that has uncertainty around their commercial operation dates, particularly the geothermal projects in our portfolio, the new geothermal projects in our portfolio. And because of a lot of delays in our interconnection, we are not forecasting any projects that we can sign that will have a 2025 to 2027 COD day or commercial operation day. So it will be very challenging to find projects that will come online in those years. So we have not included any of the assumptions in this table. I kind of mentioned this before, annual renewable percentage may fluctuate because we might add load into our portfolio. That will change the percentage. The expiring existing contracts and the actual performance of the renewable is unpredictable, especially wind resources. So all of that can change these percentages. So this is the best forecast and projection we have today. So what is the challenge, or what are the challenges with the 2025 target year? It will be very expensive to do, and that's the challenge. And if we want to keep our costs low, then that's why we're bringing this item for consideration. One is because there are lack of near-term renewable resource for long-term contracting. And then we have experienced some project delays, and we have terminated one contract that was supposed to come online in 2025. And then most importantly is the third sub-bullet here is the extremely high prices for PCC1 renewable energy credits. So again, this is line 1 from the previous table. For 2025, our existing contracts will bring us to 68% renewable. In order to get to 100%, we are 32% short compared to our load. And to meet that, we'll have to buy PCC1 REC, which is bundled REC, energy and REC. And the price of that has doubled in the past year. And then Mehdi will be showing you exactly how that's impacting the cost of energy for the 2025 calendar year. But that is really why we're bringing this back, because it's going to be very expensive to buy 32% of our load from a short-term market in the form of PCC or RECs. And the other point that we like to make about buying RECs in from the market is that it does not provide any additionality benefits to the grid. And additionality is something we strive for as we enter into new contracts. When we enter into a long-term contract with a new resource, it helps that developer with financial stability that they can use to go finance the project. And then once the new project comes online, it's supposed to displace the fossil fuel generation, and AKA, or it's known as the additionality greenhouse gas reduction benefit with new resources. But buying RECs in today's environment is just buying RECs from existing resources. It doesn't really generate any new emission reduction benefits. And therefore, the question here is, do we want to spend a lot of money here in a very expensive REC market to buy 32% of our load just so that we can meet the 2025 target? There's just diagrams showing the PPA supports the new build and displaced generation. That's supposed to be, is the definition of additionality. So now I'll turn over to Mehdi to get into the weeds on the numbers.
Okay, thank you, Roy. So in this section, I'm going to go over some analysis we have done with regard to our cost of energy and how having 100% renewable goal could impact our cost of energy in 25 and 2026. I know we usually look at our budget with like fiscal year, but here we are going to look at like calendar 25 and 26. So when we put our budget together, when we want to estimate our cost of energy, we look at very like different variables, different assumptions. But here in this slide, I'm just going to focus on 4 variables that are relevant to our discussion today, and how these variables and how their value have changed in the last year. So when we put our budget together last year in June of 23 for fiscal year 23-24, that was approved by the board, we also provided a 5-year forecast as well. So the changes that you see here are relative to that 5-year forecast. The first variable is our load, that right now our forecast is 5% higher than our forecast in last year. And mainly that's due to adding new customers to our service territory. The second one is renewable supply, which is 16% lower than our last year's forecast. That's mainly due to the reasons that Roy mentioned, termination of like a PPA contract, delaying on some other projects, and we had like some other projects shortlisted. We wanted to get like into contract with those projects, but it didn't happen. So that's why you see like compared to last year's forecast, we see a 16% decrease in supply of renewable energy. So while we have a larger open position relative to last year, which means we have to buy a larger amount of PCC1 RECs, the market have significantly changed as well. So you can see like price of REC compared to last year has been more than doubled. So now we have a 32% open position, and the price of buying those RECs are more than double compared to last year. And it's not just like the PCC1 RECs, also the GHG-free attributes for large hydro. Those have been like, those are now 5 times larger, and there is like very shortage of supply of those attributes as well. And with that background, in the next slide, I'm going to show how this could impact our cost of energy. So we are comparing this cost relative to our forecast of getting to 100% renewable energy in 2025 from last year. So you can see, if you look at like the second row in this table, shows if we want to get to 100% renewable in 2025 at this point, our cost would be $85 million higher relative to our forecast from last year. That's almost $17 per megawatt hour higher compared to our last year's forecast. And if you look at the last row, which is like 50% renewable, 50% GHG free, that basically continue our current goal. That would be, basically we have to spend the same amount of money that we forecasted last year to get to 100% renewable. We have to spend that same amount of money just to get to 50% renewable, 50% GHG free. So there's a significant cost increase to get to 100% renewable. And we did the same kind of analysis for calendar 2026. This is not just like a short-term impact in 25, but also in 2026. You can see our load is going to be 3% higher relative to our forecast from last year. Renewable supply, even like a larger shortage, around 25%, because we expected a larger number of projects to be available in 2026. REC prices, we still expect to be pretty high in 2026. Again, like double as what we forecasted last year, and also same thing for the GHG free price. So when we look at the cost of energy for calendar 2026, it actually looks worse compared to 2025. So relative to our forecast from last year, we expect our cost of energy to be $122 million higher. And even getting to a 50% renewable, 50% GHG free, going to be around $28 million higher relative to our forecast from last year to get to 100% renewable in 2026. Any question on these 4 slides so far?
Can you just speak a little bit to the sort of 60 to 25%? I mean, is this caused by more demand for renewable energy to meet the state goals? Therefore, it's harder for us to get it, or I mean, what's driving this sort of market?
So there are like different elements. We had like some, as Roy mentioned, we had a project that we were expecting to come online in 2025. We had to terminate that contract. We have a few other projects we have a contract with that are delayed due to supply chain issues. So we don't expect them to come online in 25 or 26. Those are delayed as well. And there were some other projects we were negotiating with developers. We were expecting them to be online in 25 or 26. So are either delayed or canceled. And due to some like other like changes in the market, for example, how the RA would be moving to an hourly format instead of the current monthly concept, a lot of these like counterparties we talk with, they don't want to sell, for example, their wind projects because they think it has much higher value relative to before. So we were in negotiation with some counterparties to add some of these projects, but now they don't want to sign a contract anymore.
But in general, I would say it's because of shortage of supply and the high demand for these products. That's an accurate statement.
And is there any like, when you try, I realize we're in a relatively short period here, but I mean, do you look at changes in California law? Because my understanding is some of this is we don't get much stuff from out of state because California makes it so difficult to put so many burdens on power that a lot of people just don't bother to import it into the state. Do you see any changes there that would increase the available market?
So the challenge with out of state renewable is transmission. So we do have SunZia that we signed last year, 20 megawatts of wind from New Mexico. They're building their own transmission line from New Mexico all the way to Arizona and using existing transmission from that point forward. So to get these large transmission line built is a huge undertaking. I think Pattern developer in this case has spent the last decade trying to do this, right? And finally come to fruition. A lot of capital thrown into this. So it's not an easy thing to do. And that's limiting, main reason, the transmission is the main reason limiting these renewable out of state to be delivered to California. But I will also point out, I think on the next slide. So if we look at the third row, it says 78% renewable by 2026, just based on our existing resource portfolio, and that's pretty remarkable compared to, you know, the state mandate at that time, probably lower than 60%, right? And so we're still doing pretty good with our portfolio.
Adam had a question.
Oh, no, I think Roy answered it. Thank you.
Going, are we done?
Any more questions or?
Okay, is that the end of your?
No, no, I have like 10 more slides.
I'm like, okay, what are we
So-
doing?
Do these quickly.
And we also look at the net position, like thanks to the financing for doing this analysis and creating this graph. So basically we looked at, okay, so this is like our estimate for cost of energy, how much our revenue would be and how much it could impact our net position. So based on the previous forecast from last year, we estimated our net position to increase by $37 million in 2025. But now based on the new estimates, if we want to adopt a 100% renewable strategy in 2025, our net position will decrease by $45 million in 2025. And basically, based on our assumptions, our estimate shows that for every 1% increase in our renewable goal, our net position will decrease by $1.7 million in calendar year 2025. And we did the same analysis for 2026 as well. So now you can see again, if we want to adopt 100% renewable in 2026, the net position will decrease by 43. So in total, around $90 million decrease in net position in calendar 25 and 26, if we adopt the 100% renewable strategy. And in 2026, our net position will decrease by almost $1.9 million for every 1% increase in our renewable goal. If there's no any question, we can pass back to Roy.
Thank you, committee. Okay, all right, so I'll go through these very quickly. So we're gonna present the options on the next slide, but just to mention a couple of considerations here. One is, we already talked about, it's gonna be very expensive. To reach 100% annual renewable goal in 2025, we might want to take a more gradual approach. Affordability is very important, and that is a main factor to drive electrification. And we don't want to continue to buy RECs in a very expensive market because it doesn't provide any grid benefit or incremental grid benefit. And also it's very important to know that we are trying to drive towards hourly renewable matching, which is much more important than annual. So buying solar alone will generate more RECs, PCC1 RECs for us, but it is not gonna help, serving renewable at middle of the night. That's just doesn't match well. So our focus is still trying to find best fit resource for hourly matching. And we will continue to maintain 100% renewable product for interest customers. If we were to shift away from the 100% goal from 2025, we'll still have a Eco Plus or similar, Eco 100 or Eco 100 similar type of product for interested customers. So here are the.
Can I just make it clear too?
Yeah.
The Eco 100 customers do not get a 5%. That is not a 5% discount. That product is high.
It's a premium.
Right, it's a premium product, so it's gonna cost more. There was no mention in there about the fact that that was a higher cost product, but yeah.
Thanks.
Even higher.
It's gonna be a higher premium. Well, we don't know. Maybe, we don't know. We'll see. Go ahead, I'm sorry, Roy.
That's okay. So we have a couple options here. One is the low cost option, right? The low cost option is we maintain the higher of 50%, which is status quo, what we do now, or renewable portfolio standard, because the renewable portfolio standard will increase gradually over the second half of the decade and all the way to 60%. So we'll take either the higher of the 50% or the renewable portfolio standard requirement from the state. And the remaining will continue to be fulfilled by carbon-free energy. Pretty much status quo, and that will be the lowest cost option, while still maintaining 100% clean energy, right? Well, let me talk about the high cost option. The high cost option is just to stick to our goal to achieve 100% renewable annually by 2025, right? So as you can pretty much tell, our staff's recommendation is the mid cost option here. It's very lengthy, and I have to do this slowly. So we'll drive to 100% renewable annually in 2030 by procuring resources that's focused on maximizing our already renewable matching, not randomly picking renewable resource just to buy it so that we can meet 100% annual goal. Okay? But at the same time, we will maintain at least a 60% minimum annual renewable content between 2025 and 2029 calendar year. Then this way, it will provide us with flexibility based on available resources, based on our ability to sign PPAs that match hourly matching, and then balance the need to keep the cost low. So we can, without a prescriptive percentage target for those years, for these interim years, there's flexibility to balance affordability and renewable. That's what we're trying to drive towards. And we'll again try to avoid buying PCC1 under this approach and option. And before we get to the recommendation, this is benchmarking against other CCAs. Okay, I'm gonna look at here. So the black line at the bottom, the linear line, is state's RPS, right? And our option, the low cost option, is the green line. So if we choose the low cost option for the first couple of years here will be above state RPS, then we will take on the state RPS for the second part of this this period. So that's low cost option. And you can see that the gray lines, the solid gray line is the high range of other CCA's target, or at least based on available public source that we can find, that's their planning targets. And then the gray dash line at the bottom is the low range of the CCAs. We looked at about 10 CCAs. Thanks, Shana, for looking into that. So that's the low range, and you can see the low range is pretty much the RPS and 50%. So the red line is if we stick to the 2025 goal, we will jump all the way up to 100% and maintain 100% across the way. And the blue line is our mid-cost option. Just as an example, right? I mean, we will reach the endpoint 2030 at 100%. Anything in between can fluctuate based on where we actually land for that particular year, but no less than 60%, which is the dotted blue line shown horizontally there. So that's how these different options look compared to other CCAs, compared to the RPS target. Any questions on this graph?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do we achieve the 2030 goal? Like the assumption that we will have PPAs and projects that are actually providing us with energy to get us to there, or?
Yes.
Okay, so we're not relying on the market.
No. So our hope, our expectation is that based on what we are seeing today in the market, projects will start to come online starting in 2029, 2030. So we will be able to sign contracts now that has a 2030 commercial operation dates. That's based on the most recent Cluster 14 study published by the ISO and the IOUs on various projects that we've seen. They used to have a 27 COD, now they all have 29, 2030 CODs. So we believe there will be more opportunities for us to contract these resources that can come online in those later years, and therefore we can hopefully reach 100% by 2030.
And those resources would fill out our hourly matching goal as we move up that to 2030.
Yeah, but I guess my question is, so Sunzia, we've locked in that price. We now have an agreement with them, correct?
Yes.
But so in 2030, will we have enough of these agreements that we either presently have today, or are we saying we're gonna negotiate those?
More, we're gonna negotiate more contracts to get us to 100%.
Yeah.
Long-term contract.
Correct, but there has to be some assumption on that price. I mean, we have supply side issues, right? We have like an increasing amount of electricity that's being used, right? And then we have this demand, we have the demand, we have this supplying the energy and the demand side. So are we assuming that we know what that future looks like? I mean, when we first said we were gonna do this, my position at this board was, let's do this if we can financially afford it.
Yes.
Right? Which I don't think everybody around this table understood the implication.
Yeah.
Right? So I have no problem with this, but I also don't wanna paint this really rosy picture that in 2030 or in 2026, you're gonna be back to us saying, it is, you know, a market that is so stochastic that we'll never be able to figure out where it's.
So basically, I think, Carlos, your question is how confident are we in reaching this in 2030? We can we're only as confident as based on the currently available data we have. So we have PPA price indicators from talking to developers for 2029, 2030 COD projects, not the best fits projects. We hope that we can see more wind, more geothermal offers that can come online in 2029, 2030, but we're not seeing them right now. We're seeing a lot of solar plus storage, so we have price for those. So what we know is there will be projects coming online in those years. If all the network upgrades required to support these projects, meaning the grid infrastructure can support all these new capacity coming online, which is the cause of the current delay, is the grid is not ready. Developers are building projects, solar is being built, storage is being built, but the infrastructure around it is not ready to support it. That's why everything's being moved back. So hopefully by that time, we will have, we can't predict the future, right? So, yeah, this is. No, I understand. So there's some pricing data based on the available information we have today. We're seeing more projects that have more promising COD dates in those years. Therefore, throughout the next couple of years, we'll continue to engage negotiation with these projects and build up this portfolio with hourly matching as the primary goal to kind of lead to this drive towards the 2030 100% renewable.
So I just wanna move us along, because I know people have to get home to kids and other things.
Sorry.
And I know, poor Adam. So, how many more slides?
Like 3 or 4?
Let's rush. I need them done in 3 minutes, 1 minute a slide.
Okay. So just a quick note here. Okay, so we see the high range here. It doesn't mean that we're not comparing apples to other CCAs. So they might have other products in their portfolio that we don't have. We're very clean, right? We don't have PCC2, PCC3, biomass. So just want to make that note. This is the critical slide here. This is a very important slide. So the first column is a low cost option, right? Percentage is 50% or higher 50% RPS. The next column is an example of where we will land on the mid cost option. And then the third column is the high cost option, which is 100% starting from 2025. And the next two columns you'll see, and let's look at the far right column. It's going to cost us $432 million more if we stick to our current target starting in 2025 compared to the low cost target, right? If we take the mid cost option in this particular example, it's going to cost us about $216 million more. As you can see, we have incremental progress from 2025 all the way through 2030. But it's still significantly less than the high cost option, which is our current goal. So this pretty much sums up the story here on the cost side.
And the data point that might be helpful
Go
is
back to
that the cost of energy projected in the 5-year budget, it's online, averages out at about 380 million, plus or minus. So when you're looking at these numbers, that's in addition to the 380 million that's already been per year. So getting to 100% next year would cost us around 85 million more. That represents about 23% increase over the original budget estimate.
Okay, recommendations?
Recommendations, yes, so our recommendations, the mid-cost option. And all the reasons I've talked about, not repeating them again, so here's the recommendation. 3 minutes?
There you go.
Nice work. Thank you. You can come speak at public comment 8. So your recommendation is the mid-cost option. And
Yes.
can you, since we now know your recommendation, can we pull back that slide, please, with the cost on that? So
Okay.
we can understand. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and open it up to, people have been asking questions along the way, but I wanna, I think what I'm gonna do actually first is open it up to members of the public, because I think it's important to hear maybe what the public has to say at this point, if there are any comments. Okay, no public comment. All right, well, good. All right, we're gonna move to board commentary and discussion. Director Mack.
I'll be very quick. Being a little bit horrified about advertising this by 2030 and then maybe having to go, oops, we can't make that. But putting that aside, if we don't pursue these contracts now, other people will. So if we're not aggressive in trying to seek these contracts and keep moving forward, we're losing ground. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would assume other agencies, especially other fellow CCAs, will, but they will probably all do it with, with cost in mind. Yes, we're in a very high price environment right now for all products across the board.
So to me, it makes sense to pursue the mid-cost because if we don't keep moving forward, we're actually losing ground to others who might get those contracts and we don't.
Okay,
I would essentially agree with Director Mackin, and I'm also interested in the mid option. I think partly because, I look back at our mission at PCE, and I feel like this decision is core to fulfilling our mission. To reduce greenhouse gas emissions by expanding access to sustainable and affordable energy solutions. So it does need to stay affordable, right? I think to Director Romero's comment earlier, as we're seeing in this presentation, to stay the course to our first health goal of 2025 is no longer affordable at this point. But it also needs to be sustainable. And I think part of this discussion, which I think kind of echoes the last item we had, is to be clear-eyed, as Director Romero said, about the true cost of taking these steps forward. And part of what we're talking about, I feel, I may be getting in too deep here, but is the idea of investing in PPAs and longer term agreements for a more sustainable price that we can offer to our customers is important. As Director Mackin was noted, we need to take advantage where we can of those longer term investments and keep moving toward this goal, which is part of our mission. Otherwise, it's, we may fall prey if we're trying to meet a renewable goal without those agreements by buying more short-term RECs that are going up in price. So, I just feel, and I'm not horrified about setting a goal for 2030 and continuing to move toward that goal with the understanding that we may have to have another meeting like tonight, if that doesn't end up being the case. But it is important to keep moving toward that goal, I think, to our mission. So, and I feel like we've begun achieving what we set out to by aiming for this target in the first place. The 100% target. I don't think that was a problem, and I think we're pursuing this in an intelligent way. So it's an unfortunate delay to our ultimate goals, but I take heart that our mission and our fundamental strategy haven't changed. It's clear that to me that we're still on the right track by pursuing something like the mid option. And if we keep our eye toward long-term sustainability, we'll eventually get there as soon as is practical.
Yes, Carlos.
The quick question maybe is to Nick. Nick, does the net asset position basically decline every year because we're putting this 41, 42, $38 million a year? Or are we passing some of these costs off as part of our energy costs to our, to our residents? Because this is, I mean, look, this is more than what we had, $260 million more than what we anticipated. I mean, based on your assumptions, which let's assume they're correct, right?
But make sure I understand the question. Under the old, we just approved changing rate making, so
Right.
I feel like I'm in this two different, but in each world. Under the old world, we wouldn't have changed rates and it would just impact our days cash on hand. Which we have extra today, but this would severely dent that. Under the new rate making rule, approach, this would directly impact customer rates.
Right.
So if we increase customer rates by $432 million, that would increase. If we increase costs by $432 million, that would increase rates by $432 million.
Right, so sitting around this table, yeah, thank you for that answer, sitting around this table, we understand this is going to have an impact on the cost of provision of energy to our residents. So it's not just, because we're now going to this hybrid model of price.
Does the mid option impact? I mean,
Yeah,
we're talking 216 million.
Just an example, right? I mean,
That's fine. I understand, that, yeah, you picked a particular path to get there. I mean, do we have enough reserves that we cover this, or do we raise rates? And are PG&E rates gonna raise following the same path? I mean.
We don't have enough reserves to cover the 216 million, so rates will have to go up. I do think PG&E rates will go up over time as well, so I'm not saying we'll be more than PG&E's, but customers will have to pay the mid option as well. Is that your questions or?
Yeah, I'm just trying to, between this and the previous, I'm trying to understand, if we pick this, does that mean that if it's expensive, that our rates could exceed PG&E versus picking a low cost option to keep it below potentially?
I don't, under the mid case option, I mean, this is just hypothetical numbers, I don't think they will be above PG&E's, but point I look at this is it is $216 million more than the low cost option. We may think it's worth money well spent to achieve our goals, but it is incremental cost that will be passed on to customers.
Yeah, I guess I was trying to understand the balance between these two goals sound like they're kind of.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm gonna let Director DeGolia speak, but you have hit it on the head, Craig. We are hearing from customers, energy is too expensive. The question really becomes to me is, are we hearing from customers, I'm really mad because I'm not 100% time coincident with green energy? No one's to me. Seen that.
Most people couldn't say that whole sentence.
So the real question is that have we set ourselves into a philosophical box? With parameters that have changed on us in a way that will and has the environment for electricity and the cost of electricity and the economy changed, and to your point, Carlos, and Tiger, the political world landscape changed in such a way that we have to make a readjustment. And I'll just turn it over to Director DeGolia, because I have a feeling, Rick, you're going to be able to bring this all together.
Well, let me ask a question. The low cost option includes selling off RECs.
that is correct.
So what you gotta focus on, to get to 50%, we sell off RECs we already have. We already have the renewable energy in our portfolio being delivered from the PPAs that we've entered into. And that reduces us down to a number where we generate revenue because we sell more expensive energy than we would otherwise be doing. For me, the goal to be 100% renewable isn't particularly important. What's important to me is to be 100% without any fossil fuel generated energy, and to spend our money in ways that reduce, that in fact creates additional emission reductions. So one thing that you guys didn't really focus on, but is absolutely in this presentation, is that pursuing this mid-cost option where we enter into new PPAs for new energy to provide us with the projected percentages, is entering into PPAs that will give us the hourly renewable matching goals that we have to get toward the matching that we had previously said we wanted to achieve by 2027 and that we're going to discuss next month. And I think that's very important. I frankly think that in this whole energy mix, the most important thing is to have the goals and advocate for the goals that end up in completely going away from fossil fuel generated energy. And if we don't get there because the cost becomes so much more expensive than we had anticipated, okay, we don't get there, but we maintain the goal and we push for it and we do everything that's reasonable to try to get there. And I think being customer centric means the cost is absolutely critical. So we have to stay to the low cost strategic commitment that we made. I think that's way more important than being 100% renewable. The renewable term we have to satisfy to the extent the state requires it, but it's a political term that the state legislature defined. And so in my mind, what's really important is that we go away from fossil fuels, which we have done, but we are buying system power to deliver it to our customers at night and during some other periods in the winter, because there's no other energy that we can obtain at that time that would be 100% renewable. And
I'll get you, Tom.
Okay,
Go ahead,
so
Tom.
Madam Chair, speaking as somebody who used to work at 1,000-megawatt coal burning power plants and survived to tell the tale, I'd like to support the staff recommendation here because it moves the ball down the field. It's not as fast as we want it to, but as Mr. Golia said, this is progress. It's achievable, it's doable, and
Is that a motion?
due to the lateness of the hour, I'd like to move the staff.
Is that-
Yeah.
You looking at the question? Do I have a second? Okay. We have a motion on the table. We have a second. Is there any further discussion?
I'd like to finish this piece of discussion before we leave it. So I think what I heard is somewhere between low cost and mid cost, like if we didn't sell off any of our recs, is that still the mid cost option or is that yet something between?
Yeah, so let me clarify. I mean, I think that the mid-cost projection is a good one, but I think per what Colleen raised, we're gonna review this.
Oh, yeah.
Because $212 million or $216 million is a lot of money, and that's a rate increase. So I don't know if it's gonna make sense for us to get to 80% or 100%. I think we're gonna have to review that and see what the contracts are. But to me, all the contracts are gonna come before us, and so long as those contracts are helping us move to the hourly matching, that, you know, that's good for us and our customers.
Yeah, I guess what I'm,
So-
and I accept that it's an incremental, so that's helpful. I just think that the cost equation here is, I think we definitely believe somewhere in 28, 29, 30, that more stuff's gonna come online, that the market's gonna be cheaper to deal with this. And so in between here and there, as long as we don't sort of let our philosophy drive us hard through this really expensive time, if we're willing to soften the philosophy for the next, say, 3 years to keep the costs down, and then ramp back up as the market allows, that makes a lot of sense to me, so I guess as long as that's what mid-cost means here.
So
Yeah.
it is have the flexibility component in it, right? So we have a minimum 60, right? It could be lower than what's shown on the chart here. But
Could be a
yeah.
flat 60 all the way to 2029.
I have a comment about.
Go ahead, Sean.
It could be.
Yeah.
My concern here is that what I don't want to do is kick the can down the road. I do not want to be in a position 5 years from now that we're in tonight, where we have to make a huge jump that ends up being exorbitant, and then we miss the goal again. Which is why I think there's, in the staff report, it talks about an upward trajectory. It's flexible, so it might be low and then bump up, but we had a lot of internal discussions about that minimum level, and I'm hopeful that we don't sell off power that we already have at that 68% where we're at, and would prefer not to backslide.
Yeah, I'm just struggling with the philosophy for.
I think you're right.
Thank you.
And to that effect, I mean, if it were to 260 million, as to Rick's comment, that's a lot of decarbonization programs that we could fund. That's a lot of lower electricity that we could provide. So it's the walking that very fine balance between cost and the product. I mean, this is, you know, a very sophisticated economic discussion that we're gonna have to sort of coalesce around. But I think what's good about the mid-range is the momentum is moving in the right direction, with the acknowledgement that we cannot box ourselves into a situation that makes the economics of the business we're in untenable. So if everyone is confident with the motion that's on the table in the second, and we have no more questions, I would go ahead and call for a roll call vote.
Can we make one more comment? It'll be,
You've got a roll call vote coming. Do you need to make one more comment? Go ahead. What's your comment?
So one thing in our assumption, we are not assuming any new PPAs here. So if we can find any like new long-term contracts, that like cost that you see here, that could be lower, because that could like, this is assuming we have to buy a REX or GHG free attributes to cover that open position, basically.
This is conservative.
Thank you. Perfect. Okay. Roll call vote.
San Mateo County, Appleton.
Yes.
Belmont.
Yeah.
Brisbane.
Yes.
Burlingame.
Yes. Yes.
Jump in the gun.
Oklahoma, yes, Daly City. East Palo Alto.
I'm gonna be the pariah.
Okay, when we're done. Hold on.
Foster City. Half Moon Bay.
Yes.
Hillsborough.
Yes.
Los Angeles.
Yes.
Menlo Park. Millbrae.
Aye.
Pacifica.
Yeah.
Portola Valley. Redwood City. San Bruno. San Carlos. San Mateo.
Yes.
South San Francisco. Woodside. Motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, Carlos, I just want to ask, is your no, because you would prefer one of the other?
Look, I think this market is so darn unsettled that we're gonna be back here very soon
Yeah. Okay.
pursuing this, right?
Mhm.
I don't feel comfortable voting for the mid. I would say that, yeah, and again, I think for our customers, cost is important.
Right, but you're
So-
not saying that the status quo is what you would have supported.
Yeah, correct.
You're saying that you're concerned about cost. And I just want this on the record for clarification, because I think a lot of us feel the same way you do. I just want to make sure we all, your opinion and your thoughtfulness on this is important to us, and I just want it kind of on the record. Thank you so much.
And I think we heard, Sean, we're gonna be hearing.
Every year.
Every year, and yeah.
All part of this budget process.
So I know that some people may have to take off if you do. The next item is an important item, something we do have to handle tonight, but it doesn't require. So if there's anyone who really has to get back to daycare or family for some reason, please feel free.
We're gonna make this 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Item number 12, please.
So order.
That's in order.
Started.
Jeremy
Mr.
Wayne.
Jeremy.
Senior Director of Regulatory Policy. We're here thanks to the California Energy Commission. That's the reason why we're keeping you here for just a few minutes longer to discuss a new obligation that's being foisted upon us called the Load Management Standard. And this is something that is just a discussion as noted for this meeting. We will require board action at either the April or May meeting. So we're going to keep the slide deck for April, and I encourage you to all look at the attachment that was accompanying this item in the agenda to see the draft plan as written in its full length. And Doug here will give you a little teaser trailer of what it's all about.
So thank you very much, Doug Sherpa, Managing Counsel, Regulatory Policy. And yeah, so this will be the trailer for the actual item that'll come up later. But the Energy Commission did want this presented to the board tonight, basically. So to set the stage very quickly, in January 2023, the Energy Commission created a new load management standard. And the idea here is to create cost-effective either programs or rate structures to reduce peak loads and to ideally move the electricity use away from peak and to other hours that would be theoretically cheaper to serve. And so as part of that effort, it's a multi-year effort, the first step is to submit a plan how we intend to accomplish this. And so this plan is pretty high level, is what's going to be coming before you. And the regulation really allows for two ways to do this. One is a marginal cost-based rate, which is basically a real-time pricing rate, varying by hour, different every day. And the other is to offer a series of programs that will respond to marginal cost signals, but not directly result from the rate. And we have a preference as staff here on this. And I'm not getting into too much of the details. The first stage of this is to look at these marginal cost-based rates or the programs and evaluate them on these 5 criteria. So is it cost effective? Are there equity concerns? Is it feasible technologically? Are there benefits to the grid? Are there benefits to the customers? And this plan talks about our plan to analyze these 5 things. We don't come to a conclusion on any of them because we don't have the data yet. And I will skip past this, but as you can see, this is a long-term process. The first things to go live would be in July of 2027, I think is the main message there, that we're at the beginning of a multi-year process. So option 1 for the marginal cost-based rates, the concept from the Energy Commission is that PCE would design our own rates completely independently. And staff have taken a look at this. This is probably not feasible or cost-effective without getting into too much detail. Fortunately, PG&E is also doing this process because they're subject to this, and they are using real-time pricing pilots, which have just been approved and expanded through the CPUC, and we are able to sort of piggyback on their efforts and to see, is this going to work through their pilots? So we're exploring joining their pilots for the marginal cost-based rate component of this. Probably not going to be the workhorse of this effort. The workhorse of this effort, I think, is going to be, there are going to be issues with the marginal cost-based rates. But as you all know, we have a pretty robust suite of DER programs of various kinds, the EV managed charging, residential solar programs, GovPV, Flex Market, residential electrification direct install. You've heard about all of these. There's a DER plan. This is probably going to be the workhorse that's going to shift our load from expensive hours to cheaper ones. And well, I guess I'm done because the clicker stopped. Okay, so as just go to the next one, because I think the next one is next steps.
Can you
That's
get
it for
that?
me. Oh, one more. We have the option to delay if we need to. Next steps. So the plan that you have in the packet was going to recommend, we're going to explore these real-time price pilots, and we're also going to move our own PCE programs forward with a goal to meet this overall goal of moving customer electricity use from peak to off-peak and in an efficient way. The plan itself as drafted, which you'll see has a lot of language about, we will be exploring this, we will be collecting data, is in the packet, so I invite you all to read it so that we can come back to it in a future meeting. And the future one, I believe, is to come back in April. So any questions about that? That was over 5 minutes.
Okay, yes, great.
So do you have a sense of the magnitude of what you're trying to move off peak? As you go to do these pilots and exploration?
That is a really good question, and no, we don't. A lot of it, part of the skepticism around real-time pricing is we don't know how responsive customers will be to price signals.
Right.
It could be very, very small, so we could spend a lot of money setting it up, designing it, staff time, computer time, checks to Calpine to find nothing moves, and that would not be what we want.
How good do we feel about PG&E's pilots? I guess, I appreciate you, I feel like I was gonna ask something like, would it be a deal breaker if we ended up not liking them? It sounds like, as you mentioned, the workhorse is our own internal programs, so that's good. I guess I was just curious, like if we were to end up not liking them and not opt into them, would we be able to continue with just our internal programs as far as you can tell?
Yeah, by the letter of the regulation, that should work if we find the PG&E pilots aren't technically feasible, or they're not cost effective, or they're gonna cause problems. We certainly can opt out of those. Leslie has more to say on that.
On the pilots, we've been engaged in conversations with these pilots with PG&E for a couple of years, so way before this LMS requirement came about. They do actually need some CCA partners to make the pilots functional, because so much of their load has been being served by CCAs that they don't necessarily have enough remaining bundled customers to run functional pilots that are mandated by the CPUC. So they're very motivated to make this enticing for the CCAs to participate. VCE is been doing a pilot already this past year that they've had really good success with PG&E, that's ag pilot specific to agricultural customers. That one seems to be promising for a couple of folks. Wouldn't necessarily apply to us, that particular rate, but we're keeping our toe in the water with them and following and joining the meetings, the coordination meetings, to stay engaged. But if it's at any point, it doesn't look like it's gonna be a good deal for us, like we would not participate. Yeah.
Thank you.
Right, any other questions? Anything else, Sean, or is that all right to wrap up?
I would recommend public comment.
Oh, yes, thank you very much, Kelly. Any members of the public who have a comment?
No public comment.
Thank you, Brianna. You heard your vote. Right, with that, I would suggest everyone read the draft PCE LMS plan, which was provided in tonight's meeting packet. Maybe we could just send a link out to that, just in general, so you have it at your hands, at your fingertips. I really want to thank everyone for the late evening. Unless there's any other business, meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.